It's the Mixed Martial Arts Hour with
The Mixed Martial Arts Hour back in your life on this Monday, September 21st, 2015. Hello again, everyone. I'm Mario Helwani inside our New York City studio, and it is so good to be here on a Monday afternoon. Beautiful New York, fall time. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this, and I know the last month has been a little weird for all of us. It was like 4 weeks ago, we had that crazy show. Then we were off due to some fall maintenance. Then it was a Labor Day Tuesday show. Last week we were off due to Rosh Hashanah. By the way, Happy New Year to all my brothers and sisters out there. And if you are fasting tomorrow night for Yom Kippur, I hope it is a easy and a fast and a healthy fast is what I should say. Hope it goes pretty fast for you. I'll be doing that. But it's great to be here on a Monday because there's so much to discuss. I missed all of you. It just feels right. And the good news is we're not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. No weird weeks coming up, at least for the next couple months. So that's great news. Back to normal. And like I said, so much to discuss because this past week in particular was a very interesting one. It was a non-UFC weekend, and sometimes those are not the most exciting, but we had a lot going on this weekend. We had WSOF, great fight between Justin Gaethje and Luis Palomino. I mean, if those two fight 100 more times, it would be great for WSOF. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, both from a booking and divisional standpoint, and also from a health standpoint. I mean, the amount of damage these two inflict upon each other is incredible. But still, it was a solid card, solid showing for them. And then, of course, Bellator Dynamite on Saturday. Wow, a lot to digest there, a lot to unpack. We'll be doing that throughout this show. But bigger than those events, bigger than Japan coming up, bigger than UFC 192, bigger than anything right now, and one of the more important events in the recent history of this sport transpired exactly a week ago. And sometimes in this sport, things happen, people get all up in arms. They get very upset. They tweet. They boycott. They say all kinds of crazy things, and then a few days later, it all kind of fizzles out. It happened with John Fitch when he was released. Happened with Stitch Duran, Burt Watson, Reebok as of late. And these things become a campaign. They become a thing, and then it's on to the next fight. I hope that what happened to Nick Diaz last Monday isn't just a thing that fizzles out. I hope it becomes something, and it will remain something that we talk about for weeks and months to come until it's rectified. Because as I said on Thursday on the MMA Beat, it was one of the most disgusting 4-hour stretches in the history of the sport. The abuse of power exemplified by the Nevada Athletic Commission, the disregard for the facts and for what's right and for due process was just mind-boggling. It was ridiculous. It was appalling. I mean, any kind of adjective that you want to use really describes what we saw a week ago in Nevada, and it has evolved a little bit. We'll be talking about it. I want to talk about it a lot more today, and I want to keep talking about it because until this thing is fixed, until Nick Diaz has his 5-year suspension fixed and amended and taken away, I won't stop talking about it. Because it was gross. It has nothing to do with Nick, by the way, as a person or a fighter. It's what they did to someone. And this is not like, Burt or Paul Daly or John Fitch or Yushin Okami. This is not someone getting cut and then being able to go to another league or promotion or another line of work. They have taken away his ability to make money. They have said you cannot fight in Nevada, and as a result, you cannot fight anywhere in the world because the UFC is going to go by that. And I'm okay with that if that's the way you want to, You want to treat Nevada, but this guy can't work now for 5 years. What he's best at, he cannot do. That's a problem. All right, we're going to talk about that all throughout the show. A lot to discuss. Around 3:30, we'll get your questions and comments. I know a lot of it pertains to Nick Diaz, so looking forward to that. 3:05, we're going to talk to Urijah Faber, who, of course, is a coach on The Ultimate Fighter Season 22 alongside Conor McGregor. A lot to talk about with Urijah Faber. The Dwayne Ludwig saga continues to roll on. So I want to talk to him about that. Always great to have Urijah on the show, of course. Nick Diaz's attorney, Lucas Middlebrook, who kind of ended up being like the star of the show, if you want to call it that. It did feel like a reality show in some ways. It was not scripted. It was unfortunately nonfiction, but he really stepped up big for his client. Lucas Middlebrook, not a household name, but maybe the most important figure from the past week, will be joining us at 2:45. 2:25, Michael Chiesa will stop by. Officially announced last week that he'll be fighting Jim Miller December 10th. That show headlined by Paige Van Zandt versus Joanne Calderwood. Eddie Alvarez will stop by at 2:05. Want to talk to him about what's next. Is it Anthony Pettis? Is it someone else? We'll find out. Josh Barnett stops by at 1:45. Of course, in less than a week, he'll be fighting in Saitama. First time in almost 10 years for Josh Barnett. He'll be fighting Roy Nelson. And at 1:25, we're going to be joined by our own Luke Thomas to recap Dynamite and the other news of this past week. But first up is a guy who, kind of maybe to a degree unintentionally became a huge news story last week when, him and his manager, Bill McFarland, just pretty much laid out how disgusting, how appalling, how wrong Nevada was a week ago. And it became a huge thing. He became a hero, in a sense, for both Nick and his fans and everyone involved. People have followed suit. But he was the first to stand up and say, you know what Nevada did was wrong, and as a result, I will not be fighting in Nevada for the foreseeable future. I'm talking about the Olympic gold medalist turned UFC flyweight, Henry Cejudo. He joins us right now on the phone. Henry, are you there?
Yeah, how you doing, Aaron? Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure. Thank you so much for the time. Let's start from the beginning. When you found out what Nevada did to Nick Diaz a week ago, what was your immediate reaction?
No, well, my immediate reaction was just something that was just unjust. Throughout the period of 2004 and 2012, I've probably been tested about 100 times by USADA, but never have I ever run into a case where somebody has been tested 3 times in a span of probably 12 hours. I mean, to me, it's something that's unjust, and I feel like an Olympic athlete now, a UFC fighter. I feel like I have his back because I have been there before, and not to discount the fact that he passed 2 tests, and the only test that came back negative was a test that wasn't even credited by WADA, which is the world, which was WADA. So to me, it was just like, man, it was. I feel like Nick Diaz was targeted from the get-go, and I just can't sit there, man, and let this man be suspended for 5 years. I couldn't be able to live with myself because I've been through this process from the age of 17 to the age of 26, and now I'm starting back over again with back with USADA.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Henry, you don't really have much of a relationship with Nick. I was talking to your manager, Bill McFarland, about this. This isn't so much, and again, I want you to expand on this. This isn't so much about Nick Diaz. It's about this abuse of power, if you will, right?
No, absolutely. I've never even spoken to Nick. I've never even seen him, I think, in person. Maybe I've seen him once. I've never talked to him. I think it is abuse of power. I think them just coming up with some random 5-year ban to somebody that had 1 negative test out of 3, which was tested 3 times. I think they should have just tested him once or maybe even twice, the first time and the third time. But so happened to be in this case, the second test came back negative. But again, it was a local agency that take care of it, which wasn't even accredited by WADA. So I feel like Nick Diaz has a case here, and it's doing what's right, Ariel. I think a lot of us, we tend to kind of sometimes think about ourselves. But I know when I heard the Nick Diaz case, I saw what the penalty that he got. I saw some of the prior fighters, how they kind of got away with murder. To me, it was like, man, this is something needs to be done. I think the Nevada State Athletic Commission really, I think they need to be processed in some way. I think they really need to look into them thoroughly and and check them out because, like I said before, Nick Diaz was targeted, and that's not right, man. That's not right. I've never in my life have I ever been tested. And I'm an Olympic champion area. I trained all across the world. I've been to so many countries. Never have I been tested 3 times in the span of a day, pretty much.
So it's one thing to be upset about it. It's one thing to tweet about it. It's one thing to talk about it in interviews. But you and Bill McFarland took this thing a whole other level. I mean, you came out there before anyone else and said, until this is fixed, and as a result of this, most importantly, you have no interest in fighting in Nevada and you will not fight in Nevada. How did you come to that conclusion? Because as you know, they call Las Vegas the fight capital of the world. It's the backyard of the UFC. It's in a very important city and state for the UFC. How did you come to the conclusion that this is what you want to put out there? It's a risky thing, but it's something that you have received, as I said at the top, a lot of praise for.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think of some of the great leaders that have done so well. You think of Nelson Mandela. You think of Martin Luther King. You know, these guys never really fought back with fists, with violence, but they came back with, with protests. You know, you look back at Cesar Chavez, in the early '60s. What did he do? He boycotted, people not to buy grapes at that time. And these people, they became successful because they did it in a manner where, the people actually needed them. And I think in this case, the Nevada State Athletic Commission will someday need an elite fighter to be there, and because they have taken authority and have surpassed it and have overpowered authority, it may not happen. And I'm not here to start a rally because I know we have a big UFC that's coming up in, I believe it's December 13th or 12th with Urijah Faber, with a lot of these great athletes, with Conor McGregor headlining it and Weidman. I definitely don't want to sidetrack that event. I'm just here to take a stand for my personal view, and I just couldn't do it, Ariel. Even if that means, leaving the belt on the line and allowing somebody else to fight whoever has that belt at that time, I am willing to do that because I'm willing to show, the type of person, type of character that I am, and how the fact that I'm very touched by what happened to Nick Diaz, and I think if I take a stand, it's going to show something. And again, man, I'm not here to kind of have a domino effect and have every other fighter do it at this time. But if it's heartfelt, I beg you guys to do it because this is something that's unjust. And I think that fighters, we do need to have each other's back, and maybe it might be even time for a union.
So you said a lot there that I want to ask you about. The first thing is I heard from a lot of people immediately after, this statement was made public. They said, oh, yeah, just watch when he's offered a fight against Demetrius. He's going to be fighting in Vegas if that's the place. You're saying right here and now, if you win your next fight and it's time for a title shot and they want to do it in Vegas, you say thanks but no thanks.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I'll talk to Dana White about it.
Has he called you since this came out?
No, he has not. He has not, and I really don't have a relationship with Dana White. So I think a lot of things would probably maybe even be different. Because I would love for him to actually get to know me.
Yeah.
But I would say no. And the reason why people are like, oh, you're crazy, and you're crazy. Like, hey guys, I've been here before. I understand I truly understand what it means to be the best in the world. I won the Olympics at the age of 21. I know what it feels like to be the best in the world when there's 7 billion people on this planet to say you're literally the best. No controversy, nothing. You won the toughest tournament in the whole world. I know what it feels like. So to me, it's not so much based on success as much. Like as a competitor, I want to succeed and I want to accomplish everything. But to me, like the nickname, the messenger, is to do what's right, to send a good message out there. Will I become a UFC champion someday? I know I will. Do I need to do it now? Maybe I don't have to. Maybe I'm willing to protest for the sake of this man who's been wrongly processed with a 5-year ban. I mean, that's ridiculous, and I feel like they, because he took the stand of his Fifth Amendment, the fact that he wasn't willing to say anything in court, because as you notice, Nick Diaz, he has anxiety when he speaks. He has, it's almost like I feel like, he had. I think it was a good plan for him and his lawyers to be like, hey Nick, just settle down and let's just take the stand and just let the lawyers take care of it, because as you see, he's a very emotional guy and he'll tell you what he thinks in the stance. I think they took a great approach, but I think the way the Nevada State Athletic Commission, the way they handled the situation was just, it reminds me of the movie The Hurricane. I don't know if you guys have seen that with Denzel Washington, a boxer who was wrongly accused of murder, and 30 years or 20 years later, they find out that it wasn't him, and he was just wrongly accused because he was an African American. And this is how I feel about Nick Diaz, is the fact that, okay, he passed the first test, all right, leave him alone, test him again after the fight. But no, he was targeted, and they tested him the second time, and the third time it's just like, hey man, that's just too much. I mean, that's a lot of pressure for one fighter to feel in one night, and you probably wonder why he lost. I mean, it's from honest people, hey, piss here, piss there. Lift your pants up.
Right.
Pull your pants down 3 different times. I mean, that's just not cool.
Yeah, I mean, he was tested once in the 7 o'clock hour, then the 10 o'clock hour after the fight, and then the 11 o'clock hour, and they proved quite convincingly that it is impossible to rehydrate to the point where everything's out of your system between the second and the third test. That second test definitely seems to be some kind of outlier, and for some reason Nevada is hanging its hat on it and ignoring the other 2 tests. Now, I want to ask you. You mentioned the U word, and I guess officially, because you are independent contractors, you can't have a union, but you can have some sort of a fighters association, if you will. Is that something you feel strongly about? Is that something that you think, if it was in place, this wouldn't happen to Nick Diaz, or at least he'd have some kind of protection?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe the U word it might be a little dangerous to be talking about that now, because I'm not sure somebody might smack me from the UFC.
I don't think so.
But absolutely, I think I think a sort of group or a sort of tree that both fighters could have with each other might be something that we may need to get going here, because you just never know who's next, right? I know Jose Aldo's been trying to start one. The problem is he doesn't speak English, and the majority of the fighters are English-speaking people. But absolutely, I think something needs to be put in place, and I don't know. It may be Henry the Messenger Cejudo to probably kick it off.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because notoriously fighters, and I get why to a degree, they don't really stick up for each other. I mean, that's why I think what you've done, especially with a guy, and it's one thing for Jake Shields or Gilbert Melendez, longtime friends, even Ronda Rousey, longtime friends of Nick Diaz, to do something like this, but you don't really know Nick, and I think back to UFC 151 when everyone kind of left John Jones on this island, and even in this case, I don't see a lot of fighters, to be honest, following suit. But again, I want to clarify this. You don't really care. That's not what this is about in this particular instance. You don't really want to start a rally per se. I mean, if that happens, if people do decide to join, your cause, if you want to call it that, or your thought process, that's a nice byproduct. But that wasn't your intention, correct?
Yeah, that's not my intention by any means. This is out of the kindness of my heart that I feel like there's just the right justice to be served. He should probably face some consequences. But paying a $165,000 fine, being suspended for 5 years, I feel bad for the man. From a brother to another brother, I feel extremely bad for any human being to be going through what he's going through. So, and again, man, I feel like, I would rather, in fact, Emiliano Zapata say, and I may butcher it right now, but I would rather go, I would rather die on my feet than die on my knees. And I just can't lose my integrity. I mean it, Ariel. Yeah. I'm willing to let go of that bout if that means, after this next fight, if they ask me to fight in Vegas, I will set the. I will be like, hey man, that's fine. You guys can give it to somebody else. I can wait.
It's commendable.
I promise you, man. I'm American with Mexican descent. I would promise you there's tons of other places I could fight. I can go back to Mexico City, wherever that may be. Vegas seemed my only landmine there.
Sure.
There's a lot of different places that Henry Cejudo could fight at.
Do you have any intention of calling up the UFC, Lorenzo Dana, anyone there, and saying, how can we talk about this or fix this? Or for now, are you just going to leave it at your statement and see where things go from there?
Yeah, see where things go from there. I'm not, like I said, I don't want to sound like a little girl either.
No.
But I do, that's just my final decision there. When that time comes, it'll come. And you guys will see. If you guys think this is all show for Henry Cejudo, I want you guys to really get to know me because, like I said before, success is cool. I know what it feels like to be successful. My biggest thing now in life is based on significance. Is how can I help others find a way?
It's great. I love to see what you're doing. Before I let you go, let me just ask you about November 21st. Jussier Formiga, he says he's going to derail your hype train. And, there's strong words from the Brazilian. I think this is a great fight. In my opinion, it's the number one contender fight. Regardless of Vegas, all this stuff, you two are the two best next guys who haven't fought DJ, fresh matchups. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think Formiga, he's fought some other fighters before. And I think he's a really, really good fighter, world-class jiu-jitsu. It's going to be, you have a world-class grappler, jiu-jitsu, with an Olympic champion wrestler. So that's definitely going to be your water and oil, which don't mix. So you guys are going to see an intense fight come November 21st. So I'm just getting ready for that. And that's about it. He's somebody that I'm taking. I take every fighter extremely serious. And, the winner of that fight, we'll see what the UFC does. But one thing's for sure, I ain't fighting in Vegas.
And what's going on with Joseph Benavidez? He doesn't seem to be a fan of yours, tweeting me some stuff, thinking that you're ducking him. What's going on there?
I don't know. I've never met an Olympic champion that fights in the UFC that's won the Olympics that likes to duck people. I think that's completely ludicrous, man. But like I said before, man, he'll get his time. You'll understand why I am an elite athlete, and that's all there is to it, man. This is the thing about the sport of mixed martial arts that I kind of don't like, but I get the fact that people have to, sell the fight, is the fact that a lot of it is just based through social media and talking smack and calling people out. That's cool to call people out, but when you start to wrongly accuse people that they're ducking you, then that's when I start to have an issue. I'm used to the whole Olympic style when we go in there with respect and we shake hands and we beat, and we wrestle to the end. So let the best man win. The mixed martial arts, there's a fight before and after the fight. So I just got to get accustomed to that, Ariel. I mean, that's a sport of mixed martial arts. People will they're talking about me. That must mean I'm doing something right.
Yes, and I got to say, I am happy that you are a part of this sport. Coming from the Olympics, Olympic gold medalist, it is an honor to cover you and to have someone like you in the sport standing up for what you believe is right and not wanting any accolades or things like that. I mean, even getting you on the show was a little bit difficult, to be honest. You and your manager didn't really want that kind of attention, and I respect that greatly, but I'm happy that you came on. I know last week was a very busy week for you in Mexico, and you were in Vegas for the World Championships and doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So thank you so much for the time, Henry. We'll let you get to training. I appreciate it greatly. And again, thank you for everyone who, is not a Nick Diaz fan, but everyone who just wants this sport to be as clean as possible and as honest as possible, ethical as possible. Thank you for what you're doing.
No, thank you, and I appreciate you for what you do for MMA. It's you make it exciting, make it interesting.
Thanks, my man. All the best to you. We'll talk to you soon.
Likewise.
There he is, Henry Cejudo, one of the top contenders in the UFC's flyweight division. His manager, Bill McFarland, a great guy who has been a big part of this as well, texted me during this interview that an open letter to the UFC is being drafted and will be sent within a matter of a day or so. So look out for that. Also sent me this quote, as Edmund Burke once said, quote, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. This issue is about due process." And it's 100% right. Both men know nothing about Nick Diaz other than what we know on the surface. They're not friends of his. They're not training partners of his, business associates, anything of that nature. But you got to respect people who have a lot, have a lot at stake here. And there's a lot that they can lose. We're not talking about the state of Tennessee or, the state of Florida, Texas. We're not talking about New Jersey. We're talking about the quote-unquote fight capital of the world. What they did on Monday, when you have a guy who, as Henry laid out quite well, was tested 3 times in the span of 4 hours. His first test, his third test, before the fight, after the fight, passed it. Second test, fails it. Numbers all over the place. But oh, by the way, that second test was sent to a non-WADA accredited lab, World Anti-Doping Agency, the end-all be-all of anti-doping. And by the way, the first and third tests, the ones that he passed, were sent to a WADA accredited lab. And yet Nevada is hanging their hat on this outlier. Bizarre. Some people said, he should get something. I mean, this is his third quote-unquote offense. It's not an offense. It's like the Kung Lee situation. Something went wrong. Something went awry. Could he have smoked 2 days before the test? We don't know. But what we do know is he passed a test at 7 o'clock and one at 11 o'clock in that hour. And then there was a third one in the middle that he didn't pass. But there's all kinds of red flags surrounding that test. And yet we're going to stick to that one. And then, oh, by the way, these rules that we put in place 4 months ago, these new procedures, these new rules, these new laws that we put in place 4 months ago, we're going to ignore them because this guy has the audacity to plead the fifth. This guy has the audacity, the gall to plead the fifth. That's not being disrespectful. That's your right. I'm Canadian and I know that. That's your right. That's not being disrespectful. That's not being a punk, as Matt Hughes said. That's your right. That's in the best interest of Nick Diaz. That's what his team thought would be the best in that situation. Perhaps because they knew that they were dealing with biased commissioners. That's not the way it should be. Due process. You should be granted. This it's not a trial, but this kind of this open hearing where there's no biases involved, and there should be the quote unquote verdict should be handed down when there's no reasonable doubt revolving the facts. And there were plenty this time around. That's a problem. It's a huge problem. This thing bothers me probably more than anything. And this year has been a very weird one as far as drug testing. I mean, it's been revolutionary in some senses, but Nevada has been all over the place. And when you think back to what they did to John Jones, look, cocaine use or not, John Jones should have never been tested for cocaine. And not only should he have not been tested for cocaine, that test should never have been made public. So you think back to January and where we are today and the fumbles left and right. I said on the MMA not that long ago that they've done good, and I believe they want to do good, but they continuously fumbled the ball at the goal line. This time it wasn't at the goal line. This time it was before kickoff. They went into that hearing with bad intentions, left, right, and center. And what they did to him was criminal. It was corrupt. And I hope that the governor of Nevada looks into all of them. And I hope that this time next year, none of them are sitting up there. And oh, by the way, Anthony Marnell, this kind of showman, if you will. And we'll talk about the hearings and the way they're televised. This guy had a license. This guy owned 71% of a medical marijuana dispensary as recently as a year ago. And yet he's sitting there taking away someone's livelihood. It's absolutely disgusting. Let's move along. Let's bring in my colleague at MMAfighting.com. Did fantastic work over in San Jose last week at Bellator Dynamite 1. Wasn't on the MMA beat, so we didn't hear him, but he had his live chat, and you were able to find out what he thinks of it. I think we're pretty much on the same page here. I'm talking about Luke Thomas joining us via the phone. Luke, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, it sounds like you are in a bunker, though. What's going on over there in D.C.?
I don't know, man. Pope's coming. For some reason, I guess Skype's not working, so I'm doing my best. If this is okay by you, it's okay by me.
Okay, it's kind of figuring itself out, so we'll fight through it for a second. Yeah, just our luck, Skype This is not our problem. This is not our fault. We didn't do this. It appears to be down for the entire world. So we wanted to see your lovely face on the Skype machine. We're not going to get that, but we have a lot to discuss. I'm going to save the Nick stuff for a second because you were in San Jose. You were at Dynamite. I want to ask you the same question that you asked Scott Coker in your post-fight interview. What grade would you give Bellator Dynamite 1?
Yeah, C+, B-. And the way I would break that down is I guess I would say A for effort. Well, I guess we'll talk about more about that in a minute. But I think there were radically different takes on the Dynamite show. It appeared that, like, on TV it came across a lot better than it did in the audience. Even in the audience, they were trying a new sound system. So if you weren't in, like, where the average person was sitting, you could not understand not only any post-fight interview, but any of the promos. You know, part of the enjoyment for the Kimbo Slice and Ken Shamrock show was that everyone got to hear these crazy promos that they were running, and that wasn't a part of it, so that was kind of weird. I thought the fights were okay. I mean, obviously Phil Davis was phenomenal, but generally there was never these raucous climaxes to anything. It was just sort of all generally okay. There's complaints about the new Glory gloves where guys are able to have better defense, so no one can get through them now that they've gone from Leone to Hayabusa. So I thought that the ambition of Bellator and its Spike's enabling of that was really kind of impressive. And I think that the Dynamite idea has legs. As for the execution of the first one, it needs some work.
Would you do it again? Would you do a hybrid show, or you just make a gigantic Bellator MMA only show?
I'm hearing that they may even want to involve boxing for the next one, which is kind of interesting if you think about that. I don't know that will work any better, believe me. In fact, that might be even worse. Yes. Look, I think there's no denying that the kickboxing fights on this show did not work. And it was interesting because the complaints came from two directions. If you talk to the kickboxing fans, they're like, there's basically only one kickboxing fight on this card of a Glory level. Yes, Paul Daly is on there, but this is a weird matchup for him. He's sort of half in the bag. It doesn't really count. And if you talk to MMA fans, they're like, I don't know how I feel about kickboxing. If it's good, I like it. If it's not, I can just do without it. And this one was, high level, I suppose, but just not all that compelling, which is sad, man, because, I used to work for Glory. I've been to a bunch of their events. I mean, I'm not on their payroll, and I am still happy to say that when their product works, it's phenomenal. And you got none of that really on Saturday night, or at least not much of it anyway. So, these arguments like, well, can kickboxing and MMA work? Yeah, I think they can. It didn't work this time. I think it's certainly hard to do. But if you get the typical Glory product to show up, it'll fit right in line with the average MMA fan's interests.
It really felt like this was a Bellator show, and the kid brother Glory was coming along for the ride. And if you look at who was fighting in the quote-unquote Glory matchups, a lot of them were Bellator guys, except for that one, the one main event as far as Glory is concerned. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that they didn't want to show the best Glory has to offer on this stage?
It's bizarre if you think about it in one sense, because for sure this is going to be the most high-profile Glory bout ever in terms of audience. They can't touch what Bellator numbers can do, especially a Dynamite show, right? Even with college football competition. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here and I'm guessing, but I feel like tension is not the right word. But I feel like Glory is very much interested in doing their own thing, and I'm not sure that working in partnerships with Bellator is what they really ultimately want to do. So I don't know if I'm not saying they dragged their feet. I don't know that they did, but I just got the sense that they were willing to go along with Bellator's ideas in some senses because they realized there was a benefit to it. But I think ultimately they were not really, this is not how they really want to do their product. And so I think there was probably a little bit of red tape to get through.
It really felt like a mixed bag to me because it started off guns blazing. What a presentation. And you have the kind of Pride opening with Lenny Hart and the guys on the stage. And it just felt big. It looked cool seeing these two, structures in there. I mean, it just felt different. And that's really what Scott has to work towards, trying to be different than the UFC in this day and age. But then even, okay, you get King Mo and Phil Davis. Wow, what a fantastic matchup. Of course, King Mo gets injured. And you can't, you can't predict that. You can't plan for that. Linton Vassell getting hurt or not getting cleared, I should say, is not a big loss. But Phil Davis winning, in a sense. Phil Davis, to me, and I want to get your take on this, was the star of the show. He's the one that really, rose above the rest and looked fantastic in his two fights. But in a way, there's a good and bad there, because if he wins that belt, if he beats Liam McGeary, what does it say about Bellator? In my opinion, Phil Davis is the best fighter on the Bellator roster right now, regardless of division. But if he goes from the UFC, where he couldn't quite crack, the top contender list, and then blows through the competition and wins the belt, doesn't that? I feel like that's a win for the UFC and a loss for Bellator in a sense. Would you agree?
I thought that initially. I kind of had the same thought, but the more I thought about it, I'm not so sure I agree. I was talking to Dave Meltzer. We sat next to each other on press row, and we were talking about, that very scenario, like what happens. And I thought Dave made a really excellent point. And he goes, look, Bellator didn't sign Phil Davis to have him lose. They signed this guy because they want him. They want him to win. They want to get behind him. They want to push him. And I think you saw a different Phil Davis in there, and people say, well, it could be because of lesser competition. Okay, well, maybe that's what he needs to look awesome. Maybe he can't crack the top 5, and then maybe trying to do that, it just comes up short as a promotional entity, and I understand that. Against these guys, and we'll see how things go against Liam McGeary, I wouldn't count him out. And, of course, you have a King Mo fight set up right after that if you want to do that. But for me, it's like they want to get behind this guy, not just because they believe in him and because they think he can do good things, but because he might actually look good in the organization given how he's turning corners and again, because of lesser competition. And that also a guy like him might be a bellwether, right? He might be a guy that other people look to and say, so he left. He gets to keep his sponsors. He looks awesome over there. They're promoting the hell out of him. He's on these big shows. Maybe there's something for me to go there. And so I think that he serves as an example, in Bellator's mind anyway, about possibilities for other top-ranked fighters who maybe, look, the UFC's tough. It's hard to look good there. And if you see someone look good there, chances are it's because they're probably pretty good. And if you come up short a little bit, Phil Davis is showing that maybe there's some alternatives out there for you.
And again, not trying to nitpick here, because I enjoyed the main event a lot. I love the story of the main event, and it's Tito going for that one last title run, and he actually looked quite good early on. And then McGeary, with his long limbs and his amazing guard, is able to pull off this unbelievable finish. I mean, it was a nice little package. It was a great story, but I felt afterwards, and I want to get your take from the live event perspective, they didn't do anything on the biggest stage. Probably their most viewers will find out later today. They didn't do anything to put him over. They have Tito talking for what felt like 10 minutes, and you have Phil Davis setting it up. I get that. But McGeary kind of came across as the guy who was like just happy to be there. Didn't feel like the star that you should be putting over, to use a pro wrestling term. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, because if you were sitting on press row, it was impossible to understand anything that happened in the cage.
Wow.
Like people were tweeting me, and they were saying, what is Phil Davis saying about the testing thing and the athletic commission? I have no idea. I have no idea what he said. So we were all kind of tuned out. Like when they went in that cage, we just didn't care anymore because it was impossible to understand. I will also say that I asked Tito one question at the post-fight press conference, and he went on for what seemed like 10 minutes. So I don't think that they planned to have Tito speak at these inordinate lengths. I think he just sort of took over the moment. As a consequence, it didn't happen. I'd also say Liam is a very fun-loving guy.
Yes.
I think he will connect with the fans eventually, but he's a little bit too
nice.
Yeah, well, not even nice exactly, just laid-back-ish about everything. Like, hey, Liam, we need you to go over here. Okay. Hey, Liam, we need you to not do that. Okay. He's very accommodating in ways that, like, the more diva stars that we're accustomed to maybe don't do that. So here's what I would say. I think it's inevitable, winning or losing, that Liam McGeary will connect with fans. He's just got such a fan-friendly style. And I said this to Casey, the videographer, if you looked at champions or top-level fighters out there, and you did the old political test, about who you most fans or voters are always told, I don't know if I agree with this politician's platform, but I'd like to get a beer with him. Liam McGeary passes the test about who would you like to get a beer with times 1,000. So I agree they probably bungled it, but I also think it's a matter of time before he connects.
I love watching him fight, and I think that fight against Phil Davis is an amazing one. One of the very best that Bellator could put on in the next few months. So I wanted to ask you about how the crowd, the San Jose crowd, one of my favorite crowds in combat sports. I love attending events, covering events at the SAP Center, dating back to Josh Thompson, Gilbert Melendez 1 in, I believe, 2008. I wanted to ask you how they reacted to the Fedor news, but I'm guessing everyone was just kind of sitting there, like no one had any idea what was going on. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I mean,
gosh,
that could have gone better.
Okay,
right? I mean, because you have Kevin Kay in there, and certainly we know who he is, and Kevin Kay is hugely important.
Yes,
Martial arts, both today and historically. It's the president of Spike TV. And then you have Nobuyuki Sakakibara in there, and his English is, functional at best. And then you have, Scott Coker and Jimmy Smith, and it was, again, from the sound in the audience, it was impossible to understand. And then more than that, it was like the deal is confusing. So Fedor is going to be on a co-promoted Bellator show, but he's not signed to Bellator, but it's going to air on like a Bellator broadcast here because Spike TV has the rights to it. We don't know how many fights there are. I think you reported that there were 2. It was very confusing. I think in the audience, once they announced him, the crowd went berserk. Huge pop for Fedor. But then after the news was announced, it was like, so is he fighting for us? I don't know. Just give me another beer. That was kind of the response. It was, we're happy he's here, but we'll figure it out later kind of thing.
I love this image of all these journalists that have flown to San Jose to be there and cover the event, and you're probably looking at Twitter to find out what's going on and what's being said inside the cage. The latest I heard, by the way, about the deal is that it is a 2-fight deal. One fight, that's the next one coming up December 31st. Sakakibara has an option for the second fight, but it's his option to pick up. So it's an interesting deal to say the least. Now that we know at least that he is going to fight for him upcoming, December 31st, this New Year's Eve show, we don't know who he'll be fighting just yet. We really don't know anything about this new promotion other than that Fedor is attached to it and Sakakibara is heading it up, returning to MMA for the first time in 7 years. And if you don't know who that is, former Pride founder and boss, a very important figure in the history of combat sports. What do you make of his decision? A lot of people upset. Should we be surprised that Fedor went this route?
I often hate on Twitter, and we've talked about this, where journalists will predict something relatively obvious, and then it happens, and they come back and they go, "See, I told you so." So I didn't get it quite right either, but I do recall saying on the MMA beat that I found it hard to believe he would go to UFC, and not that because they would not make him a generous offer. I am sure that they did and that they tried very hard. But, for example, who was his confidant / translator at the media day?
Yeah.
It was Jerry Millen.
Yeah.
Jerry Millen's a former Pride executive who has a long-time standing antagonistic relationship with Zuffa. I just found the idea that they would find a way to work with UFC just hard to believe. Now, it turns out they didn't sign with Bellator either, right? So there's that as well. So I guess no one was really right in that sense. But I think for me, it's like I was glad when he retired. I don't really need to see him back. I get the fan attachment. It's real. It's palpable. But for me, it's just so funny. It's like, well, now he's not going to fight Cain Velasquez, and there's no Andrei Arlovsky rematch. And look, I was so desperately wrong about Arlovsky. We talked about that too. It's not even funny. Guys have had these resurgences apparently, and I should say especially at heavyweight. But for me, it's like Fedor kind of knows he can't compete with these guys. And I think he does want to do something for the Japanese MMA scene. And I think those are his bigger priorities than what John Q. Fan wants on Twitter. I understand why the fan wants him to fight Cain Velasquez. I get it. It makes sense to me. Fedor doesn't want that for his life, it doesn't seem like. He hasn't for a while. And I just think fundamentally fans need to come to terms with that. They can make whatever evaluation of that they want after the fact. But when you realize he's just got a different set of priorities, suddenly these decisions all appear to make sense.
Yeah, once I saw Jerry there earlier in the week, I kind of figured, all right, he's been a part of Team Fedor now for a long time, and apparently he's still a part of the team. I have a hard time seeing how the UFC is going to bypass him and strike this deal. He just seems to be a part of it, and that's the way it is. And the UFC isn't a fan of his for obvious reasons. He's done a lot of shady things. I loved Mauro Ranallo's tweet about him in the middle of the show. Unbelievable that Mauro would go there. That's why we love Mauro Ranallo. Let me ask you this before I let you go. It's been a week since the Nick Diaz situation. I expect us to talk about this once again at length on Thursday. MMA Beat, the A-Team is back. That's very exciting. But a week later, if I ask you to describe what Nevada did in a word or two, what comes to mind?
Fundamentally unethical. There's just no defense of it. And I know there's been some people who have tried, and I know that there are some who have a different perspective about what you should do before a commission and what rules mean and what they don't mean and how you should value them. And I understand their perspective. I really do. And I think a lot of people are just trying to make sure that the right thing happens here, not just for Nick Diaz, but for the sport generally, and that we can all come to terms about what things should happen. But nowhere in the code is it written that anybody owes the commission any respect. This is not the Victorian-era England where you have to get on bended knee before royalty. They are not royalty. They are government-appointed bureaucrats, no more and no less. yes, and they certainly serve a role, but in acting to punish Nick Diaz the way they did, they so grossly overstepped their bounds that the only thing left for them to do is to resign. Matter of factly, first thing tomorrow morning, if not today. That's
all
it.
of them.
There's nothing else to be said. They cannot be trusted to do their jobs competently, not now, not ever. And more than that, the commission system needs to be reformed. Fighters need to have a legitimate, no bull S real appeals process where real experts with real actual talents and expertise on matters can weigh in on an evidentiary basis. As long as this is about how guilty you may or may not be, and not innocent, just different ranges of guilt, and you have no real appeals process unless you can afford the attorney who's going to be on your show today, this is such an unfair level playing field. So that's sort of my view on the whole thing.
And that's not in place right now. So do you foresee this changing for Nick Diaz? Do you think that if he takes this to the highest court possible, that his 5-year suspension will be reduced, or maybe even just completely thrown out and he could be a free fighter?
I'm generally a terribly negative person, which you know very well. So my guess is I'm going to assume for practicality's sake that he is done for. I'm going to hope that I'm wrong. Only thing I'm looking for is whether or not the court takes it and says, well, look, maybe you have a point, maybe you don't, but we don't really want to weigh in on a matter that another state agency is sort of handling, so we're just going to back out of this quietly, which is not, again, making an evidentiary claim. I think the challenge that the Diaz attorneys have is to get someone to say, here are these facts. Please look at these facts. Look at how his bottle had his name on it from the Quest laboratory. Look at how this whole testing procedure should have been thrown out. And then, of course, the other evidence about, the water labs versus non and all the tests and so forth. But to me, that's what the challenge is. And again, that's beyond my expertise. We can only hope. But I would, if I'm a fan and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, this is so unfair, it might be, but fixing it is very difficult.
Great stuff, Luke. I'll see you on Thursday.
Yeah, buddy. Thank you for having me. And sorry for the complications. But
no problem. There he is, Luke Thomas. Great stuff as always. And he brings up a tremendous point. That second test, by the way, I said there were red flags all over the place, right? That second test, they attached his name to the paperwork. This has to be anonymous. And you're putting Nick Diaz, renowned bad boy, marijuana smoker, now you're throwing his name onto the damn thing. And apparently a box was checked off a box was not checked off that should have been checked off, that this was done privately. I mean, all kinds of issues with that second test. Yet that is the one that we're going to say, I think we have a positive test here. Suspend the guy for 5 years. What a joke. All right, let's move along. Let's talk to Josh Barnett. He has a very big fight coming up in a matter of days, and what a mensch Josh Barnett is, because from what I understand, he is flying to Japan later on today. He's so kind. He's taken out some time out of his day to join us here. Morning in Los Angeles, but he didn't have to do this, and I appreciate it greatly. Josh, are you there?
I am here.
You are a mensch. Do you know what a mensch means?
Oh, yes. I'm very, very familiar. If I'm going to be managed by the one and only Super Hebrew, Ariel Helwani,
yes,
then I need to understand a little bit of the language, a little bit of the back and forth, so to speak.
Yes, of course. Well, you are that word in every sense of the word, and I appreciate you being here greatly. So this is a big deal. This is a big deal for you. I know you have fought in the last 5 years or so. You have fought in Japan, but the last time, do you remember the last time you fought in Saitama, Japan, at the Saitama Super Arena? Do you recall off the top of your head?
Mighty Mo in Dream, and that was, I think, in 2008 or 9.
It was in exactly... It's not even coming up. Why isn't it coming up on your record? That's bizarre.
You know what? Why isn't Skype working?
Yeah.
Apparently Mercury's in retrograde, or so some of the hippies say.
It's unbelievable. Skype isn't working, and that's very disappointing because I can't see your face. Regardless, you're back in Japan, and I know you got to do the reality show. I know you got to do the press conference. But for you, I mean, when I think of Japanese MMA and I think of the heyday of Pride and someone who really, as an outsider, really embraced the culture and the fans and the kind of fighting that we loved over there, why does it mean so much to you to come back? And we haven't seen you in quite some time. Why does it mean so much to you to go back there, of all places?
Well, for me, it's really personal to fight in front of all the Japanese fans. But I'm hoping that with this fight, that even though it is the UFC specifically that we're going over there for, but that the entirety of the Japanese MMA team can be elevated by having a card that really puts the interest in the fans again and really gets them excited about MMA as a whole. And also, it's the time. It's this. Everything is led up to it. Originally, I think I was going to fight Roy in July, and they put together this road to UFC Japan, and this attached us to this Saitama card, and everything is just lined up. I've put in the work, I've put in the time, and for all the people that have put the time into me, past and present, and for all the fans that have been waiting for me to come over there and fight, this is the culmination of that.
And by the way, this is why I couldn't figure it out. That fight against Mighty Mo was in Yokohama. It wasn't in Saitama.
Was it? Well,
yes.
There you go.
That's why I was getting stumped. I was like, what? I wrote this down last night, and you put that there, and you kind of threw me for a loop. So the actual last time was in 2006 against Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, Pride FC Shockwave 2006. That was the last time you fought in Saitama.
Yeah. Well, I did do I had a pro wrestling match against Hideki Suzuki on a Dream Yaranoka or Dynamite or whatever they were calling it. That was in 08 or maybe 010, but I haven't done an MMA card there since, well, I guess 2006, as you say. I wouldn't go against you, that's for sure. You know how to keep track of numbers.
I had the honor and privilege of going to Japan for the first time. It was at UFC 144. We did this video where we talked to people on the street and asked them about their interest in MMA and Pride and things like that. And it was amazing how little the youngsters, the youth of Tokyo knew about mixed martial arts. And you think back to, a decade or so ago, and they were drawing incredible numbers on television with the likes of Bob Sapp and Fedor and you and many others. During your trips there for the last, couple months doing the promotion and all that, do you get a sense that it's coming back, that there are people who remember you, that remember Pride, that are into this, or is it really a completely different market now?
There is interest, although I don't know how attached they are to the old MMA promotions like Pride and Dream and such. But I know that those fans are still around, all still waiting to see some of their old favorites. But this may be a case of a new breed of Japanese MMA fan, and maybe through my fight, though, I can get them to go and dig up the archives and go start taking a look at where this stems from.
Dying to ask you about this, and when I heard about the news and then remembered you'd be on the show Monday, I was so happy. So as you probably heard, Saki Kibara is back. His new promotion launching New Year's Eve of this year, and he has signed Fedor for his debut show. What do you make of this?
I haven't done any press about it, but it's honestly that's what I've been saying since the minute he said he was coming out of retirement. That he was not going to go to the UFC. In fact, I bet Juliana Pena that he wasn't going to go to the UFC to begin with, that he was going to go to Japan. So she owes me $20,
yes,
I believe. But I've been telling everyone that if he's coming back, then there's going to be a big Japanese show attached to it. It's all going to line up for him there first. And if he decides to go to the UFC or do something else, I'm sure that he will. That option will exist. But his draw, his value in Japan is monumental. So there's no way he's going to pass this up.
But do you think that there is a part of him at all? I mean, this guy. Does he not want, that last piece of his legacy to be complete, to test himself? All that. I mean, look at the heavyweights these days. These old guys coming back and doing great. Fabricio, Andrei Arlovsky, and the list goes. Mark Hunt, and you're back. I mean, why not try to test yourself against the best? At this point, you're out for 3 years. Go for it. No, you don't think that there's any part of him that wants it, or maybe there is a part of him and his handlers don't want it. Why did you think, and I believe you when you say that you believed from the get-go that he wasn't going to go to the UFC. Why do you think that is?
I just think that the draw to be in Japan is just that much stronger to begin with, because the way he's going to get paid, how he's going to get treated, I don't know. I mean, I suppose the UFC technically could rival that or exceed that, but it's unlikely. It would be them stepping out of bounds, maybe beyond what they do for anybody else. Well, they probably do it for Rada and Conor. Who knows? But it's just too easy to do so. Plus, him going over there and doing a fight doesn't necessarily mean he won't end up in the UFC. I mean, he's not in. I wouldn't imagine that he's going to be signing into some sort of long-term fixed contract. He'll probably just go over there, do his match, and then from there on, go to the next location, or maybe even call it good. Maybe say that was good enough. As far as his drive to want to continue to compete and try to add to his legacy, I really couldn't say. I think overall he's pretty satisfied with what he's done as a fighter, and he has a right to be so. But obviously he still has some competitive juices flowing. Otherwise, I don't think he'd take that fight.
Last thing on this topic, Sakakibara, do you think that he will succeed? Are you confident?
It's really, today is not yesterday.
Yeah.
And what used to work, I don't know if it will again. The big thing that Sakakibara has going for him besides experience is that he has relationships prior with the television stations, and that is a massive component to being able to push your product and to try and become successful in Japan. You have to be on terrestrial Japanese TV in a good time slot, and he has the potential to do that. But does he carry with him a stigma from the fallout of Pride before with some of the more scandalous aspects? I don't know entirely, and I'm not really paying that close attention to what's going on behind the scenes, but I hear things here, and I've been hearing about this show coming around for better part of a year. So I think there's a possibility it'll happen, but I don't know. Maybe the Japanese fans' tastes have changed to such a degree that he's out of date.
And let's forget about Japan for a second here. It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that fighting Roy Nelson is very personal to you. There's some kind of issue there. Why is it so personal? Why don't you like this man?
Actually, I don't really have anything personal with Roy, particularly. But I do I'm very personal about myself and my own performance. My last fight was not acceptable for me in any way, shape, or form. And I have a real bad taste in my mouth over that, and I want to make sure to go above and beyond in this fight. I know Roy has tried to push buttons before via the internet and things, but I don't know. Sometimes I look at it as, like a toddler with a butter knife trying to challenge, a Viking with a battle axe. Like, what? You just have to sort of laugh and pat him on his head and move along when it comes to that sort of thing. But I've never really, personally, face-to-face, I've never had any poor interactions with Roy. But I know he wants to knock me out and walk around claiming that he's king of the mountain and try to be the star of this show. But there ain't no way in hell I'm going to let that happen. I've trained way too hard. I put in way too much work. And this fight it's not just about winning. This fight's about making a statement.
So, you mentioned that last fight. It has been a long time, almost 2 years since we've seen you in action. You last fought against Travis Brown. How difficult has it been for you, this great competitor, you're always striving for the best and all that, to sit on a loss like that for almost 2 years? You haven't. I often see and hear from fighters who say you lose like that, you want to get right back in there a month later to erase it, to get that L off the top of your record. It has been sitting there for almost 2 years for you. How frustrating, how upsetting has that been for you?
It's been, if I think back on it, as a competitor, it's shitty just to go out there and to perform less than your abilities. And it's just, regardless of anything else in conjunction with that fight. But it's a monumental waste of my time and the people that invest in me when that's the way it goes, or as far as my own performance. So It's very personal for the time I invest in it and the people that invest in me, that I go out there and show exactly what I'm capable of. But as far as, losses happen, bad nights happen, and you can't dwell on them too much. You just got to move on from it. And I've been so busy with everything else, with movies and New Japan Pro Wrestling TV deal and this road to UFC Japan on Fight Pass and training Victor Henry and Colleen Schneider and Jasmine Duke and everybody. And I haven't really had too much time to really dwell on my last fight, but I have had a lot of inspiration to prepare for this one.
What's the biggest?
What's the biggest inspiration?
Yeah.
Man, it's always, for me, it's like a perfect storm of my coaches, these moments out there during training, my students, and providing an example for them. It could be a song that comes on the radio. It's always about times and places and things, and it's never just one thing for me. And I had a great training camp with Eric Paulson, and went out to the Naval Academy and trained with Joel Sherritt, and brought Tony Nelson along. And I've had some really great goes in the room, and I've really put in a great amount of work, but not just work that has made me better overall as a fighter, as a coach, as a martial artist. And so I want to go out there and just let it all hang out.
I'm happy you brought up those other things that you got going on, in particular the coaching and, of course, the acting.
Well, then you don't have to plug them. Yeah, I just throw them out there.
No, it's great. It's great for me. And I think it's important to note that you haven't just been sitting on the couch and licking your wounds, so to speak, or that one wound. I'm wondering, were you ever too busy? And I know you've been on the show. It's not the first time you've been on the show during this almost 2-year period. But did you ever think, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to fight. Did you ever get to the point where you actually were considering never fighting again?
Nah, I think that will come down to probably body over mind. I think if the body will tell me to slow down before the head will. But I'll cross that bridge when I get there. I do look forward to laying on couches and licking a wound, though. Wait, is that a little too graphic for your audience?
No, I love it. It actually got me very excited.
She will be too. But it's an opportunity to be an athlete. It's a short one at that for most people, and I've managed to get a lot of longevity out of it, and that's a lot of thank yous to my coaches like Matt Hume and Billy and Eric, and so many to list, that have instilled in me work ethic and technique to keep me through this, and also just self being driven to be the best at this that I can be, and to continually evolve, even if it's only in the smallest ways. But as long as I keep growing and keep getting better, I still want to keep doing it. And I know that even when I'm done with fighting, I don't intend to have too much downtime. But whenever that day comes that I'm able to sit back and reflect, it'll be well spent.
Yeah, absolutely, to say the least. By the way, I wanted to ask you about this. I know you got there late, but you caught the tail end of it. What was your take on that whole Go Big press conference, and in particular how it turned into the Conor McGregor show? As a veteran, I was thinking in particular what Josh Barnett and Dan Henderson were thinking up there on the stage, at the very top of the stage, seeing this youngster kind of become this lone wolf and attack almost everyone up there. What did you make of that whole show?
Well, I didn't personally feel attacked, I guess.
No, that's what I said, for the most part. Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know. He's the biggest thing is he wants to speak his mind as much as possible, right or wrong, smart or stupid. He's just going to let it rip, and picks up the mic whenever he feels the moment come to him. His in-ring performances have been fantastic, and I've been impressed. But there's more fighting to do, and you're right. He's not necessarily going to go out there and put people over. He ends up burying a lot of folks. I mean, he goes on to, I think it was crazy. He's sitting there and he's talking about, Jose Aldo, you come over here, you're giving you championships and all that. right over, there's Ronda Rousey, who was also given her championship, just insulting the shit out of her at the same time. And as he's trying to drop a bomb on Aldo. And then, or, and just saying, I'm the biggest draw, boom, again, dropping a bomb right on Ronda while Connor's trying to, to blow himself up. And surprisingly, nobody has, taken offense and sat back and go, hey, mofo, you're trying to clown this dude, but you just clowned me.
Yeah.
How about this? Which would have been, an awesome thing to sit up at the top, especially with my little bottle of water, and watch Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor, throw a tantrum at each other. That would be hilarious. Completely. And the other thing that would make it so funny is how, by accident entirely, it would have all come across. Just one dude throwing his promos out there and just hissing off another fighter, and then just watching them just tumble. And in this case, watch it be, the two biggest pushed UFC fighters in the company just tumbling all over the ring, just all over the stage, just talking shit all over each other. And you'd have the Ronda Rousey fans and the Conor McGregor fans. Although the McGregor fans and some of them are on another level. They think because Conor's so brash that therefore that is license for them to say any inane, obnoxious thing that comes to their head. And it's like, well, it's great to have heroes and even to be inspired by somebody who's polarizing or the nicest person in the world. But remember, it's their accomplishments are their values. And, go live something for your own life and enjoy, inspire by it. Take whatever the best of it that helps you from the people that you look up to as heroes. But at the end of the day, man, their fights are their fights. Your fight is your own.
Let's end on this. What is Josh Barnett looking forward to the most about Saturday? Actually, it will be Sunday in Saitama. You know that arena. You know those people. You've been there the whole week. Is there something in particular about that fight week, that fight day, the weigh-in, something that you are really looking forward to reliving again?
I just cannot wait for whoever's reffing that match to say, fight. That is, I just want the change to be unleashed. And I want to come out there, look Roy right in the face, and let's just go. Let's see who's going to Valhalla today.
There's something about you fighting there is very magical. I love it. If it was just that one fight on the card, I'd be all in. I can't wait for it. By the way, what's the deal with this Samsung thing that you're working on?
Well, I'm actually going to stop by Samsung today and pick up a brand new phone for them. And as I'm going on and about my adventures, as I often do, I'm going to use my Samsung phone to record them and take pictures and use their technology to put out my story out there in the world and hopefully make it more interesting and easier for all my fans to follow along. And anybody who's not a fan, maybe to become one.
All right. Twitter.com/Josh L. Barnett. Can we grow the beard back, by the way? I'm seeing a picture of you with the beard on our screen. I missed the beard. You had such a great beard, one of the best beards. And I'm not talking about your chin.
I had a great beard.
Yes. Get it back, please.
There is a possibility for the beard to make a return, but Roy's he's got beard and mullet. It's like he's got a beard on the front and a beard on the back. So I figured, what would my beard do in this scenario other than being overshadowed?
Fair enough. I wish you the best again. Thank you so much for coming on as you prepare to leave in just a matter of hours to Japan. Can't wait for the fight. It's this Saturday night here in the United States, Sunday over in Japan. Roy Nelson versus Josh Barnett back at the Saitama Super Arena. That is magical in its own right. Cannot wait for it, Josh. I appreciate the time, and I wish you the very best. I'm very much looking forward to your return. It's been a long time since we got to see you fight, and it hasn't been the same without you, my friend.
I will make it worthwhile.
All right, there he is. Josh Barnett, the War Master, back. Babyface assassin. Missed him. And you could tell it's a bit of a different Josh Barnett. He's now in fight mode. He's serious, not cracking as many jokes. And that's why I really appreciate him coming on. Big fight for him Saturday night in Japan. All right, let's move along. Let's welcome in another veteran, another one of our favorites. It's been a while since we talked to him. Eddie Alvarez joins us on the phone. Eddie, are you there?
I'm here. What's up, Ariel?
Eddie, I got a lot of questions for you. First things first, let's clear the air here. Are you fighting Anthony Pettis in January in Boston?
I sure am.
All right. Why haven't they announced this?
They haven't. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. As far as I'm concerned, I think we're fighting Boston in January. So maybe because it's so far out, But I believe it's signed and sealed and then booked and ready to go. So
your reaction to this. Your reaction to the news was great. You were like a kid on Christmas morning. You were so very excited. Why? Why were you so excited to fight Pettis?
First of all, he's the number one guy in the division right now, and I don't know if it was I wanted him, and I just didn't feel like they were going to let me fight him. I love the style matchup. He doesn't do well against got guys that fight with my sort of style, and so I wanted him first of all because it's an opportunity to move up in rankings versus where I thought they were going to have me fight because there wasn't really anyone available. I thought they were going to have me fight someone ranked top 15 or something like that, where I was going to fight a fight that would get me nowhere. So just to be able to fight him for me was a blessing, and be able to get my hands on him. And then the news that might be in Boston was that really got me excited to bring a fight to the East Coast.
Yeah, you get to fight close to home, close to Philly. The main event is fantastic. It's T.J. Dillashaw versus Dominic Cruz, and it's the same day as I believe the AFC Championship, which is on Fox, or maybe it's the NFC Championship, I should say. And there's going to be a ton of promotion. When they had that card this past year in January with Conor, it did amazingly well on FS1. So it's a great card to be on. I want to ask you about what you just said about he doesn't do very well against fighters like you. What do you mean by that? A guy who comes forward, puts pressure. What do you mean?
Yeah, guys who like to fight, get in their face, pressure, go forward. I mean, historically, he hasn't done well. He does really well with space. You give him space. He's very creative. He does a lot of good things, and I'm not down on him. I just think it's a very good style matchup for me to go up against someone like him and just be myself and not have to adjust or change anything that I do. And I think I can do really well against this guy. So that being said, and then that's going to be on the East Coast. I don't know. They're really helping me out here, so I'm really excited.
So, the last time I spoke to you was right after the Melendez win, and it was just like 2 days later. I recall you not being 100% sure just how serious your injuries were. At the end of the day, what did you suffer in that fight?
I think there was the shot in the very beginning of the fight. I broke my orbital.
Oh wow!
And I broke my nose, and I think I fractured I had like a slight fracture of my elbow during the spinning elbows. I think I suffered something like that to my elbow. So my elbow actually hurt the worst, more than my face. But everything was cleared up pretty quickly, and I was able to start training. Have a good turnaround. So
you're all good now?
I'm golden, man.
And no surgeries or anything?
No surgeries at all. Even in Mexico, they said the fracture of my orbital was on the side of my orbital, not like the bottom or the top, which is one of the reasons that caused like my eye blow up or something like that. So, it wasn't anything that I need to operate on. It's all good now, and I'm a hunter. And like I said, man, just excited to be able to move up in rank and not have to worry about staying still. And I have all the opportunity, all the leverage in the world right now to go out there and train like a demon and fight someone who's ranked up there.
What was your reaction when you found out that Gilbert failed his post-fight drug test?
I always looked at Gilbert sort of like a guy like I was. He fought outside the organization. He did things a little bit differently. Never ever looked at him as someone who would use something like that. But I'm really gullible to that stuff. I assume nobody does it. Even when I train with guys, and to me, I assume, nah, they don't do that stuff. But man, it's really it's pretty spread. It's pretty rampant, and I'm like a fucking unicorn in this sport. Like I feel like a weirdo because I never did do anything. So I didn't realize how much of different I was until all these guys start coming out. This guy gets popped for this, everybody's getting popped for steroids. And not only that, now that there's all these strict laws on steroids, all these guys are coming out and they look like bags of shit. Their bodies are changing because they can't use. So for me, I've been doing this sport for 11 years, drug-free, never, ever did any enhancement. I feel like now I'm going to, all these guys who've been using stuff and needed this and needed that, they're all going to start falling off. You're going to see their performances die, their bodies look like shit. And I feel like guys like myself and guys who've been drug-free their whole career, they're going to be able to start to rise.
I thought this was one of the more shocking ones of the last year or so because, as you said, Gilbert was kind of this throwback fighter. It didn't really have, he had a fine body, but didn't look like one that was on PEDs. And who knows, the circumstances surrounding it. He hasn't talked about it publicly other than, the one statement that came out. But I'm wondering from the perspective of an opponent who goes in there and you guys had your rivalry, if you will, and then you find out that you were fighting a guy that, according to the UFC and the statement they put out, was using some sort of PED. Do you feel cheated? Do you feel upset? Are you like, do you want to break something? How do you react to that kind of news? Because it's a dangerous thing. You're in there in a fist fight, in a cage fight with someone who is trying to gain an advantage over you.
I mean, everyone does it, right? If you're not, like, maybe guys do steroids. Everybody's trying to gain an advantage. I think if my orbital on my nose wasn't broken during the fight, I wouldn't have felt any way about it. But when my face was a little bit smashed, and then I found out he has a positive steroids, I'm like, fuck, man, he could have really hurt me. Whatever, boohoo for me for a little bit. But I just been around the sport for so long, and like I said, I'm really gullible. I assume nobody does it, and a lot of guys that I train with, that I surround myself with, don't. Like, with Frankie Edgar and the guys that I and that I sort of train with, and everybody I hang out with don't. So, like, for me, it's not a normal thing to do. But when, when you hear all these things, this guy's doing it, and guys that you assume would never do it get caught, it's like, damn, man, everybody's on this shit. And I feel more and more, like I said, like a fucking unicorn. Like, what am I, like a dork because I don't do it? Like, what's going on?
Well, please do not do it. We need some clean fighters out there. It's, as you said, it's an epidemic. It's a huge problem. Did you hear about the Nick Diaz situation? And if so, do you have any thoughts on that?
I have. I feel terrible for him. I feel like everyone else does. I feel like fuck Nate Diaz and free Nick Diaz. That's how I feel.
I know.
If I could make a hashtag, it'd be fuck Nate, free Nick.
Yes, I feel you on that one. You're not a big fan of Nate's, right?
I don't know. Just one incident, one run into.
Yeah.
When I see him again, he'll apologize or something. I don't know. Just one stupid incident. He was a little angry at me. I feel like he should apologize because his boy did steroids before he fought me, and he never mentioned anything about that after Gilbert got popped, and he had all this shit to say before the fight. He never said anything to me like, my bad. We cheated and we still lost. Nothing like that.
Yeah, and I mean, as I think a lot of people have said, it's not about Nick Diaz or the Diaz brothers. It's really about an abuse of power, I think. To give someone 5 years for, something like that is just, again, I keep saying it's an abuse of power.
It 100% is, and they're not, they're not even they're not hurting Nick so much. They're hurting the fans. You know how many people want to see Nick Diaz fight? You know,
Yeah.
that shit is fun. The shit he does is fun. You know, he's different. He's himself. He says what he wants. He does things differently. A lot of guys in the sport, including myself, we're all, you know, there's so many people that are the same. There's too many guys that are sort of the same answer, same everything. So to get a guy like him who, you know, he does things a bit differently. Maybe it's against the grain, but it's fun to watch. It's exciting to watch. So you're really ripping off guys like me and other people who want to watch him fight. You're ripping off the fans, not anybody else.
Are you going to train at the Black Zillions for this fight?
So I'm back in Philly now,
Yeah.
and my last training camp, it was great. I had a great time, but it was pretty hard on me and my kids and my family. I missed the whole season of soccer. It was a bit trying. I was gone for really long. So I'm going to do the majority, you know, a large majority of my camp in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Back with my old strength conditioning coach, my old boxing coaches, like everybody. And then, you know, when I see it fit, I'll head out to Florida and get some really good sparring. But training-wise, I'll be doing a large amount in Philadelphia, and then heading out to Florida, you know, to get some good work in sparring-wise.
What about sparring training partners over there in Philadelphia? Will you bring in any of those guys to you?
Yeah, I already talked with Coach Henry about that. We have Robin Van Roosma, him, Sean Soriano, and there's a couple really good kickboxers at the Black Zillions.
Yeah.
And they've already mentioned the option. Just, you know, I have plenty of room for guys to stay. So we've already mentioned an option of at some point having them guys come in and just having them live in with me and be following me and sparring and things like that. But there's you know, I left a really good team when I left here. I never really left Philadelphia because I was in need of something I didn't have. It was I had a little falling out with my original coach, so I felt like I needed a change. So that's why I went to Florida. But there's really good talent here. Plenty of guys to train with. I'm back with my strength conditioning coach, my boxing coach, training with a guy, Rami Ibram, very, very good, very talented, and now he's a trainer, Muay Thai guy. So I'm liking the way things are going now. I'm liking my schedule, and we'll see what goes on.
And as you know, it's always interesting when a fighter comes back from a title loss. That's the case with Anthony Pettis. He was thoroughly dominated by Rafael dos Anjos back in March. This will be his first fight since that title loss. You can understand where he's coming from. You've been in that spot before. Are you expecting to see this wounded animal or maybe a guy who's looking to reinvent himself? I mean, what kind of Anthony Pettis, and what's the psychology of a fighter who's coming back from a bad loss like that in a title fight in his next fight?
I mean, that as an ex-champion myself, it's always the most highly motivated, well-trained person you're going to go against. You know, ever coming off a loss of your title, you're always the most motivated. You're waking up late. You're going to bed. You're waking up early, going to bed late. It's just one of them things where you want to get back and prove to fans and prove to the world that you're a champion. And I'm expecting that guy, but that guy won't be good enough. Not in Boston. Not against me. I just don't feel like, however he comes back, is the guy he comes back like. Well, it won't be good enough against myself that night. It's just not going to happen. I'm baffled by fans' overall perception of this fight, but
wow,
it makes me even more excited to go out there and do what I'm about to do.
You're getting hate. You're getting a lot of people saying you're about to get your ass kicked.
I don't realize how where fans come up with these predictions and how to me, I'm like, man, this guy's super popular and they just think the world of him, or I don't know, but maybe I'm seeing something they're not seeing. But we'll see it all. The truth will come in January, right?
Yes. Last thing, Eddie, before we let you go, and we appreciate the time greatly. I'm just wondering, since you were so tied to that organization, Saturday was a huge night for Bellator. Do you keep an eye? Do you look out of the corner of your eye? Do you watch? Do you care at all? Do you like to see what the new era is all about, or have you completely, taken them out of your mindset? You don't even ever think about them, watch their events, etc.
Anybody who follows me knows it's never about the organization. It's about the fighters in it, being able to get your hands on the best guys in the world. I have zero emotions toward any promotion. I thought was really cool was the Pride girl calling out the names. I missed that when I did the Dream tournament. That was like a first goal and dream of mine to have that lady announce my name. So that was neat to have that Pride feel again, to see a promotion trying to do something like old school Pride. That was sort of real neat for me, and have them announce the fighters the way they did in the Pride manner. That was all real cool, and having her yell the names. So I think everybody appreciated that. Anybody who's been following fighting long enough could appreciate have her yelling the names like that.
Yeah, Lenny Hart. She actually is the one who says my name at the top of this show, a legend, and I agree. It was great to hear her again. Well, it's great to talk to you again, Eddie. Very happy that you're healthy and that you have this fight, that it's going down January 17th in Boston. It's going to be, I was there in Boston this past year on the NFL Championship weekend, and it's a great scene. I'm happy they're going back, especially as an East Coaster. So I wish you the best in training. Thank you for the time, and can't wait for the fight.
Thanks, Ariel.
All right, talk to you soon. There he is, Eddie Alvarez. What a great fight that is. Him and Anthony Pettis on that card headlined by TJ Dillashaw versus Dominic Cruz, which you know by now how I feel about that fight. And what's interesting about it is it's on FS1. So that's the first time in the short history of Fox Sports 1. They're now calling it FS1, by the way. And I like the new graphics. I like the rebranding, if you will, coming from an employee. But that's my take. It's the first time that there's a title fight on FS1. There was one on Fuel TV. That was Mayday McDonald versus Henan Barao. That was an interim bantamweight title fight. This is a legit bantamweight title fight. This is the real deal. This is the one that we've wanted for a long time. And I just pray everyone's healthy and makes it to January 17th. And then you got a co-main event of Anthony Pettis versus Eddie Alvarez, a true co-main event. Not one of these Fugazi co-main events. This is a true co-main event. That's coming up. Also coming up December 10th. What a week that's going to be in Las Vegas. December 10th, there's a Fight Pass show. And we just found out last week that it's going to be headlined by Paige Van Zandt versus Joanne Calderwood. Then you got December 11th. You got the Tough Finale, which is another good card. And Urijah Faber, who we'll be talking to, is going to be on that card. He's fighting Frankie Saenz. Also Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson, and Chad Mendez versus Frankie Edgar is the main event. And then, of course, UFC 194, Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. So that's back-to-back in Las Vegas, and one of the big fights that weekend. It was officially announced last week, although if you watch UFC Tonight, you heard about it a couple weeks prior. It's Jim Miller, the pride of New Jersey, going up against Michael Chiesa. He joins us right now on the phone. Michael, are you there?
Doing really good. I'm bummed we couldn't do Skype. I wanted to show you my house.
You know what? It's so funny that you say that, because I was equally bummed. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the show today. But I just want to make clear, because we've had technical issues over the last month or so. This is not our fault. I don't know if you follow the news, but Skype is down around the world. Something's going on. Shit. And it's probably because the MMA hour is today, because we've had horrible luck, but it's not our fault. Everyone's complaining about Skype. If you type in Skype on Twitter right now in the search, you'll see all these people complaining about it. So it's not our fault.
That's good to know.
Okay. But you do mention the house, and I want to wish you Mazel Tov. I know you're all settled in, and it looks fantastic, because I follow you on Twitter, and I have to say this right off the top. If anyone follows me on Instagram, I don't really like photos. I don't know why. I never got into liking people's photos. But you posted something just a few days ago that really hit me. It almost made me tear up, about you being at your house with your family, kids running around, and of course your father, and missing him. And this was like the culmination of a dream that you had, all your family and friends being over, and just kind of taking a step back and just kind of enjoying the fruits of your labor, smelling the roses, and wishing that your father was there. It was amazingly written. It was very touching. I really appreciated it, and I did like that photo because I loved everything about it. Can you take us into that moment? What was it like for you when it almost hit you and you're like, wow, I made it. This is my house that I put together. My family's over. What was that like?
It was surreal, man. It was something that, it was hard for my parents to accept that, I don't want to go to college. I have a dream. I want to be a professional fighter. I want to fight in the UFC. And, once my dad finally, took it in and we sat down and talked, he's like, you need to set some realistic goals. You need to, not everything's about winning and losing and not everything's about winning titles and stuff. Like, what are some realistic goals from fighting? And I was like, one thing I want to be able to say that when my career's done, one thing I want to say I bought a house, like the fruits of my labor, just like you said, like everything I put into the sport at least gave me a home. And, as my sister started to have kids and I just I always just envisioned being in my own house, just kids running around, just like, Uncle Mike's house, that type of thing. And just, it didn't dawn on me until like in the middle of the whole thing, I would have thought that, the first time my family's coming over, I would have been like building it up, like, oh, it's happening, but it just didn't even click in my head until everyone was here. And we're like turning the football game on, I'm going, holy crap, this is the same thing I talked about 7 years ago with my dad, and it's happening right now. So it was just, one of the best moments of my career, honestly, and I can honestly say that, everything I've ever visualized in my career has happened, except for one thing. And that's winning the world title. So it's cool to see that this is just one thing off the bucket list. And I just got one more thing to go. And I can honestly say that everything I've ever dreamt up in my head has happened,
That's amazing. That's beautiful. By the way, I look at your house, at least from the pictures. It seems like you're really in the country over there. Are you not afraid? I feel like it's very lonely out there. It's very quiet.
It's good, though, to get away from the city. You know what I mean? I grew up out in the country, but not in the woods. And I've always just wanted to live in the woods. I like the solitude. I like having some property. And, I got deer and turkeys, and I got a mountain lion on my property somewhere. I've been finding little evidence and clues all over the place. I got a cougar running around here somewhere. But
what?
I just like it, man. Yeah, I do. I swear.
Jesus, that doesn't scare you? I mean, I guess you're a cage fighter, so these things shouldn't scare you, but it makes me very nervous.
It gets a little eerie at night.
Yeah. How far is your neighbor?
My neighbors are about an acre away on either side of my house. So, I mean, there's neighbors. It's not like I'm like,
okay,
and desolate, like not like I have like a mile-long driveway. No neighbors. Like I got some neighbors, but still definitely have some space.
Yeah. And do you want that, you say Uncle Mike and the kids and all that. Do you want your own? Is that part of the dream as well?
Yeah, I want kids sooner or later, but it's just for me personally, I just think that, obviously I think my mentality would change if I got into a situation where I ended up having a kid. But just right now, I just think that I'm going to perform better through my career when it's just all about glory. You know what I mean? Like me, I just have to support myself. I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. My livelihood. I don't have other people depending on me. And for me, I put enough pressure on myself. I just always imagine if I have kids, like I would just be like, oh, I have to win this fight, or how am I going to support my kids? That type of stress. I don't think I would do so well with that.
So another reason why I wanted to have you on the show is because I'm curious as to what you look like these days. Because we have a picture of you up, but it's from a couple of years ago in, I believe, Seattle. Your fight in Seattle on Fox. You got the big beard and all that stuff. But I saw photos of you. You're at pool parties and things like that. I mean, you're looking like a young Luke Rockhold out there with the the sweet haircut and the baby face. You're unshaved. You're all shaved and all that. What's going on? Why did we completely change our look here?
Well, first and foremost, the beard is back.
Okay, it's back. That's fantastic news.
It's back. I took a different approach. I'm getting to the point now where my beard is actually like growing into my eyebrows. Like it just goes all the way up my cheeks, to like the bottom of my eyes.
Yes.
It's like connecting to my eyebrows and my hair. So lately I've been, keeping it a little more sculpted. A little more trimming. I'm just kind of not letting it go like I used to.
Yes.
Keeping the mustache trimmed and stuff. But another thing I want to do is I want a shot at being an analyst. I love watching UFC Tonight. I'm very critical of all the new fighters they have come on there, and I get a lot of feedback from a lot of people within the company that are like, man, you would kill it if you could get behind the mic. So it's like, you know, I at least have to cut my hair. I can't do the whole man bun, funky long hair thing anymore. But, you know, the beard's got to stay. That's my staple. You know, I can't get rid of it.
Oh yeah, you can make it TV like, corporate like, if you want to call it that. You can clean it up. I respect that you have a reason for doing it. It wasn't just to get some ladies. So this is something that you really want to do. You want to be a TV analyst like a Daniel Cormier, Kenny Florian, etc.
Oh, dude, so bad. I just know, like, it's one of those things where I can just tell it would not make me nervous. I just, like, for me, I'm a stat guy. You don't have to hand me a sheet of stuff that I need to study. I am a nerd about this sport. I know guys' records, who they fought, how they win, who they're married to, where they eat dinner, you know, what kind of car do they drive. You know, I'm always, you know, I'm a big nerd of the sport, and so it would be easy for me to just sit in front of a table of guys and talk about fighting. I mean, that's easy. That's I just think it'd be a lot of fun. I just definitely want to take my shot at it. And I see some of these guys do it. Like, God dang, dude. Quit saying like and quit saying speak clearly. You know what I mean? Follow the sport, and this will be a lot easier for you. So,
very well said. Well, I hope you get that opportunity. I think that would be great, and I hope you keep your beard if and when you do get that opportunity, because there's nothing wrong. Take it from. I mean, I don't have a beard like you. I wish I had a beard like you, like the one we see in our picture over here. But I think there's nothing wrong with a beard on television. So you get this fight against Jim Miller on this crazy weekend. Are you happy that you're on this weekend, the first fight of these 3 in a row in Vegas? Yeah, it's the Fight Pass show, but the atmosphere in Vegas is going to be nuts and all that. Do you like that, or are you afraid that you might get lost in the shuffle?
You know, I really like it. The one thing that bums me out is when Joe Silva called me, and he goes, we're going to do something for the first time in history. And I'm like, oh, God, you're going to have me fight on like 3 days' notice or something. Something crazy. And he's like, no, this is the first time in my career that I have called Dana and Lorenzo and been like, we need to do another show because the roster's so full and there's so many guys that need fights. If we don't have another show, these guys are gonna have to wait till spring. And you know, so the original idea was me and Jim as the main event, and I was ecstatic. You know, Fight Pass or not, it doesn't matter anymore with the Reebok deal. You know, we don't have to worry about, you know, on Fight Pass about sponsors and stuff. And you know, at the end of the day, I'm super stoked because Vegas is like a second home for me. I have so many friends and family that are going to come watch, and it's just, I always like fighting in Vegas, so I'm not worried about getting lost in the shuffle. I know that Jim and I are going to put on a great show, and it'll be something that people are going to talk about. I mean, Jim brings it, I bring it. You know, it's going to be a really good fight, so I'm not too worried about getting lost in the shuffle.
And how do you feel about the matchup? Was this one that you liked when you were approached?
Oh, first and foremost, Jim Miller's a great guy. Every time I've ever ran into him, he's always a class act. Really nice dude. I love his lifestyle. You know what I mean? Bearded hunting dude that brews beer and lives out in the country. Like he's Jim and I are cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways. So I'm very excited to get out and to get to compete against a guy that not only is somebody that I grew up watching fighting, but you know, it's just I think our styles make for a really good fight.
Where do you feel like he's at right now in his career? Because, you know, he had the tough loss to Cerrone, comes back after a long layoff against Dariush, and didn't feel like we were seeing the real Jim Miller. Rebounds, wins a split decision over Danny Castillo, but I don't know where he's at right now. He's been fighting a long time, and of course, at some point, your skills are going to deteriorate. Are you thinking that you're catching him at the right time, like he's on the decline? Do you feel like he's going back up? Do you have any kind of take on where he's at right now?
I still think Jim has a ton of fight left in him. I mean, he's an animal. I mean, the guy said this will be his 21st fight in the UFC. He's never pulled out of a fight. The Dariush match, I don't hold that one over his head because that was a last-minute replacement. You know, he was supposed to fight Yancy Madera, or no, he was supposed to fight Paul Felder.
Yeah. So
he's preparing for, you know, a striker that spins and does back fists, all these crazy things, and now you get a last-minute replacement that's a southpaw that's a big, you know, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So it's like, you know, I don't hold that one over his head because that's just you're talking about a drastic training camp change. Like, you went from fighting a guy where you're bringing in kickboxers to now, okay, I'm fighting a grappler. Send the kickboxers on. We got to bring out the black belt team. You know what I mean? So, I don't hold that one over his head. I still think Jim is. I don't ever like to look at a guy and be like, oh, he's on the tail end of his career. It's gonna make, you're gonna desensitize yourself, and then you're gonna go out there and fight. And be like, what the heck happened? I thought this. I've been preparing for a guy that's on the tail end of his career, and he's kicking my ass right now. So
Right.
I'd rather just think this is the early Jim Miller, the guy that was out, knee bar and Charles Oliveira and beating up, Kamal Belarus and all these guys. So it's, I don't look at it like that.
And I'm assuming, you're still a proud member of Cejudo, which I love because that's a small team, but it seems like you're all very close to each other. It's a tight-knit team, and no one really strays from the pack. What is it about that team that keeps you all so close? And really, you haven't blown up. I don't hear about many people coming and just like, spending a month or two there. So it really feels like it's the same sort of, maybe this is not the best way to describe it, but the founding members are still very much there and thriving. Why is that?
We just, it's, first and foremost, we got a great coach. I mean, Rick Little's very underrated. I mean, you want to talk, people always talk about Greg Jackson and a lot of these great coaches, but, I feel like Rick should get a lot of credit because if you look at the city we live in, which has no more than 300,000 people, you got 4 people in the UFC. I mean, just that alone. There's nobody else in the city that's in the UFC. There's nobody in Seattle that's even in the UFC except for Demetrius. So it's like the way he coaches, it's not just about kicking pads and doing moves. Like there's a lot of psychological stuff that goes on, a lot of small details. He's a good coach, and that's just kind of what keeps us together. Rick's one of my best friends. Sam's one of my best friends. I'm really close with Julie and Liz. So that's just kind of what makes us a family. We travel a lot together and do a lot of things. Rick gets a lot of calls about people wanting to come in and do training camps and stuff, but he's, we're not gym jumpers. You know what I mean? We don't really want to bring in guys that are looking for the secret. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I went to the lab for a couple of years, and then I went to ATT for a year. Now I want to come over here with you guys. Like, no, we're really not into that. We don't want to bring people in that are going to hang out for a while and then take what they learn here and go to these other super gyms and expose, some of our training methods. We've got a huge facility being built right now. It'll be done in about 3 months. A lot of good things on the rise for Cejudo, but, I would say the glue to the team is definitely Rick.
Are you going to Houston to support Juliana, and how far away do you think that she is from the Ronda Rousey discussion?
Yes, I'll be there. I will be there to corner Julie October 3rd. She's right in there. I mean, let's put facts to facts, all right? So you got Ronda Rousey. She's 6-0 in the UFC, correct?
Yeah.
Like 6-0, 6 finishes. Well, Julie, going back to her tough fights, she's 5-0 with 5 finishes. 4 of those are in the first round. I don't know how people are not picking up on that. You know what I mean? So I think that she goes out and does what she does against Jessica. I think that you have to put her in the talks for the Rousey fight. I mean, who else are you going to match Ronda up with anyways? Holly, yeah, you got Holly Holm, but the only other options out there right now is Cyborg and the third Tate fight. I mean, she's already blown through everybody, and, I think it's a lucrative fight. The marketing for the fight would be great. You got the first time that a tough winner is going to fight the opposing coach. I mean, that's very intriguing. That's a good selling point, and
I like that. I didn't even think of that. That's a good point.
Yeah, so I mean, just the marketing for it alone, it would be a very marketable fight. It would be very lucrative. A lot of people would tune in. I think even more than they already would with Ronda. I mean, she's a big seller, but I think that Juliana Pena versus Ronda Rousey sounds a lot more lucrative than Holly Holm versus, Ronda Rousey.
I do appreciate you coming on today. I would imagine the folks over in Seattle are a little depressed today. 0-2 to start the season. What's going on?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. Guys got paid and they're not playing. That's how I feel. I mean, I hate to sound like a dick, but it's kind of true. It's like, Cam Chancellor's sitting out on money, and it's like, dude, what are you going to do? You think that you're just going to come back on the team once you get paid and these guys are going to be happy with you? It's like, we lost that game against St. Louis because of him, because of the second string guy that's filling in for his spot. On the last freaking play, we lost because we didn't have Cam Chancellor. It's like, killing us. We'll rebound though. I mean, I don't really count, the St. Louis, these last two games, I don't really count them as huge losses. I mean, Green Bay is one of the best teams in the NFL. You played Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau. He's got like almost 700 completed passes, no picks in Lambeau. That's a tough guy to beat, you know what I mean? So we'll see. I think next week at home, we'll really see where they're at for the season. Once they can, well, if they lose the CenturyLink next week, we're in trouble. But you know,
well, I'm happy you're still a fan because I saw you hanging out with Colin Kaepernick recently. So I wasn't sure. I mean, can a Seahawks fan really do something like that? It seems a little bit, I don't know, a little bit weird to me.
I ran into Colin at Exos. You know, the UFC talking about doing that deal with Exos. Ran into him there and actually had a good talk. Like, the first thing I said, I'm a Seahawks fan, but, you know, I can appreciate any world-class athlete. So I got a chance to talk to him. He's actually, contrary to how the media portrays him, he's a freaking really nice guy. I mean, I will put him up there in the top 3 of nicest professional athletes I've ever met. He's just very genuine, very cordial. You know, judging by the things I've seen and heard about him from social media, I never would have thought he was the way he is. I mean, he's really, really a pleasure to talk to.
Wow. Can you still be a Seahawks fan and say that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
You know, what's funny, though, is I said that. I brought that up to him. I was like, you know, how's this rivalry between you and the Seahawks? He just started laughing. He goes, dude, I played ball with all those guys for years. The rivalry's not between us teams. It's between the fans.
Yeah.
Like, I'm friends with a lot of the guys on the Seahawks. I still talk to them on the phone, you know, on borderline a regular basis. So it's, you know, I think the real rivalry now between teams is being developed with Green Bay. After seeing that game last night, that was pretty intense.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on just a few hours after. I know it is somewhat of a dark morning in Seattle. You guys are used to those kind of cloudy mornings, but maybe 0-2 brings on a little more clouds. In any event, I want to congratulate you on the new house, my friend, and the big fight coming up. Good luck in training. Good luck, of course, to Juliana at UFC 192, October 3rd. And I'm looking forward to this fight against Jim Miller. It's amazing. Miller no longer ranked the UFC rankings, and that just tells you just how deep.
That's a joke.
Fair enough. That just tells you how deep that division is. So that's a great fight, an important fight at 155. Looking forward to it. Best of luck. We'll talk to you soon, my man.
Thanks, man. It was good to talk to you.
All right, there he is, Michael Chiesa, one of the top fighters in the UFC's lightweight division, stopping by. He returns to action December 10th. All right, really looking forward to our next guest. Can't wait for this one. As I talked about early on in the show, even last week on the MMA beat, still very fired up, and it's not going to stop. As we have seen more often than not in MMA, we kind of develop these causes, we get all fired up, and then we move on to the next one a couple days later. Well, what happened to Nick Diaz a week ago in Las Vegas is not something that is going to go away, at least not on this show or any other show that I'm a part of, because it was a crime, it was corrupt, it was disgusting, and a whole bunch of other things. So with that being said, I want to welcome in the man who represented Nick so very well, in my opinion, last Monday. His lawyer, Lucas Middlebrook, is joining us right now to talk about what transpired and where we go from here. Lucas, are you there?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the time. So right off the top, a week later, I know you're not just working on the Nick Diaz case. You got a lot going on, very successful, and I'm sure you're very busy, so I appreciate your time very much. But a week later, how do you describe what you were a part of last week in Las Vegas?
Yeah, if I had to describe the hearing, it was, in a ways, it was not unlike other contested hearings in that it was an adversarial process, to say the least. But in a lot of ways, it's definitely unlike a normal contested hearing in that we were not presenting to an impartial either tribunal or even an impartial arbitrator, where you present evidence, you rule on objections, and you have a hearing which has some process and some substance to it. I felt from the very first objection to a leading question that I proffered, and I kind of got some laughs from a couple of the commission members that I knew those objections weren't going to go very far in the hearing, but nonetheless, we still needed to make all of those objections that we felt were proper in order to preserve the record that we would need to take up to appeal in order to represent Nick going forward.
Were you expecting that kind of an environment?
We had watched previous hearings with the commission. We were familiar before going in with the individual commissioners. So we knew going in we weren't presenting to an impartial body that was going to give us a fair hearing, a hearing that we're used to in different contexts. So yeah, we were prepared for that type of environment.
When you first met Nick and his manager Lloyd Pearson and were able to look over the facts and found out that he was tested 3 times on fight night, and first and third tests were sent to a WADA accredited lab, and he passed those tests, and then the second test was not. He failed that test, and there are all kinds of red flags surrounding it. Did you think like, oh wow, this is a no-brainer. This is great. We're going to present this. It's all going to go well. He's not going to be punished. Were you confident, or did you know in the back of your mind when you're dealing with commissions and all that it's never that easy?
Well, when we first looked at initially when we first looked at the facts, what you first get is a report that you've got 2 negatives and you've got a positive within a short period of time, and not until you dig a little deeper and get what we call the litigation packets from each laboratory that you then start seeing the concentration values. And once we saw the concentration values from the 3 different tests, we knew we really had some solid evidence that the Quest test was an outlier here. And so as we started to dive into that and discuss it with our expert, yeah, we felt very confident about the facts and the evidence. But I don't think we ever went in going into the commission with any false aspiration that those facts and evidence were going to lead to a great result from the commission. We went in knowing that we needed to present those facts and that evidence in a manner that was clear, that could be understood, and that provided a really solid record if we had to take it up to a higher judiciary body.
Why wasn't the B sample of that outlier test tested?
A couple reasons. One, as our medical expert, as Dr. Kella explained during the hearing, we didn't feel a need for the B because we already had 2 negative tests from a different lab within hours of the Quest facility. And a second thing to understand is that in normal drug testing protocol, so the majority of drug testing in this country comes under the Department of Transportation. They cover the airlines, they cover the maritime industry, the truckers have to take the test. They have protocol where if you request your B specimen to be tested, it is sent to a second independent lab. It is not tested at the first lab. And you heard Commissioner Lundvall explain to Dr. Kella that under the commission's protocol, they just have the same one tested at the exact same lab. So there isn't that second layer of independent analyses. And when we looked at that, given that we had 2, not just 1, but 2 separate specimens sent to the WADA lab, we didn't feel there was any reason to have the B tested once again at Quest.
So you serve as counsel to both the National Basketball Referees Association and also the Professional Soccer Referees Association. You have dealt with sports. You also obviously focus on labor and employment law, civil litigation. It's a very impressive resume that you have. And Lloyd had been telling me for quite some time that he hired the best and that you guys were going to be ready. I'm wondering, do you have any kind of history, the world of combat sports and in particular mixed martial arts and also in particular dealing with commissions like Nevada?
No, this is my first time presenting in front of Nevada Athletic Commission. In terms of administrative bodies, I've dealt with some in the transportation industry, but my litigation experience up to this point is either in courts or I also do a lot of work in labor arbitrations. So we represent a number of labor unions outside of the sports world where you'll have arbitrations over different matters, including actually drug and alcohol testing litigation quite often.
And it seemed to me like Commissioner Pat Lundvall really took issue with the fact that Nick was going to plead the Fifth Amendment. It didn't matter if she asked him 27 questions as she did or 500. He continued to do that. And by the way, I was so very impressed. I don't know how you got him to do it. Just Nick, keeping cool and not losing his temper, because I know many people, including myself, probably in that situation would have lost their temper with all those questions and having to repeat Fifth Amendment over and over again. In hindsight, would you have done the same thing knowing how she reacted to that, as wrong as it may have been?
Absolutely, without a doubt. My colleague Nick Diaz and I do not regret that decision in any way, shape, or form. It was the right decision. Nick was not going to get up there and be presented with an impartial questioning or examiner. I still feel like that the commission was out to embarrass him and, for better lack of terminology, to trip him up. And we did not see any positive value coming from having him answer any of their questions. And instead, he invoked a right that everyone in this country has under our Constitution, is to not testify against yourself. And that right includes the right that a negative inference cannot be drawn against you for invoking that right. So we firmly stand by that decision.
Were you shocked at how many times, A, she asked him questions, and B, that they used this against him? Like, we talked earlier about some of the issues with dealing with a commission like this, but to use the Fifth Amendment against someone seems to be, taking things to a whole other level, and really does. That's what really told me that, wow, they are biased and there's an issue here. Were you shocked at how they dealt with that, and in particular Pat Lundvall?
I was very surprised for two reasons. One, as I advised in the hearing, it was my understanding and my legal interpretation that the Constitution, both of the United States and Nevada, would trump the Commission's regulations. But wholly aside and apart from that is their own regulations, as the way we read them, do not give them the ability to draw a negative inference against somebody who is invoking the Fifth Amendment privilege. If Nick had just gone up and said, I'm not answering, or if he didn't show up at all, then they would have the right under their own regulations to draw a negative inference. But the way we read the regulations is they can't do that when he properly invokes the Fifth Amendment.
Have you seen some of these clips online of Pat Lundvall's, when they said, is he testifying? She said he better be, or Francisco Aguilar and Anthony Marnell kind of joking when they overruled you and saying, did you bring your black robe? Have you seen these things that may not have been evident during the actual case, or the hearing, I should say?
I have not seen Commissioner Lundvall's comment, although I vividly remember her saying that at the outset of the hearing when I immediately in response advised her that he would not be testifying. I did see the comment of the first objection of the other two commissioners later on. Yes, I did.
Does that bother you? I mean, do you feel like, you're spending time and money here to do the best work possible and present the best case possible and really just represent your client as best as possible, lay out the facts, and it feels to me like they were mocking you.
It doesn't bother me, and the reason is, well, two reasons really. One, looking back at it, it was a proper objection. Mr. Eccles was leading his own expert witness, so I think the objection was proper. And two, any evidence or demonstration that Nick did not receive an impartial hearing, thereby denying him due process, is only going to bolster our credibility and our support for an appeal. So no, it really doesn't bother me.
Did you know prior to the fact that Anthony Marnell, as recently as a year ago, owned 71% of a medical marijuana dispensary in Nevada?
I did not know that going in. I now do know that.
What does that tell you? I mean, is that a whole other can of worms? Would you have discussed that in the hearing had you known?
No, I don't think I would have raised it in the hearing. My job was to defend Nick and defend Nick based on the facts and the evidence, and if there were outside issues going on with the commission, I don't think it would have been appropriate in my role as an advocate in that hearing to bring that up, especially if I didn't have proper evidence and facts to address it at the time.
I saw the Scrum interview that you were a part of after the fact, outside of the hearing, and a reporter, I believe it was John Morgan, asked you, in your opinion, what would have been, the most fair punishment, and I recall you saying somewhere around a year. I kind of feel like he should have gotten no punishment because he passed the first and third test, and the second one, there's all kinds of red flags. Why do you feel like he deserved any kind of punishment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the answer really is twofold, and one is more of a legal answer in that we did not think that they actually pled their complaint against Nick properly. If you read paragraph 14 of the complaint, which is the lone allegation supporting discipline, it was limited just to the use or administration of a prohibited substance. And exactly like you just said, we think we presented more than enough evidence to prove that that did not occur on January 31st. The only basis to which they could possibly have disciplined him, if they had pled it properly, which we say they didn't, would be the incorrect answer by mistake on the questionnaire.
Mm-hmm. And what is that? What was the answer that he should have put down?
Well, he answered no, and arguably it should have been the opposite answer.
But if he has a test that shows that he failed the 7 o'clock one and the 11 o'clock one, he passed those tests, why is no the wrong answer?
Well, they entered over my objection. They entered evidence into the record that in the week leading up to the fight, that Nick had come in over, albeit a lower threshold, used for testing, for a THC metabolite.
Do you have any idea when was the last time Nick smoked marijuana before that fight?
I have no idea.
Okay. It's certainly interesting, and I know the big question that everyone wants to know the answer to is, where do you go from here? We're not experts at this stuff. We're just MMA people. What's the next step? How do we rectify this?
We have to file what's called a petition for judicial review. It's a written document. It's similar to if you were at a lower court level and you wanted to appeal their decision. But what you're doing is you're reaching out to the judiciary in Nevada, and you're asking them to review the decision that the commission made. And you take up the record that you established in front of the commission as the factual basis to do so. And so you wrap all the facts and you create your legal argument in a written document, and you file it with the court. And then, of course, the commission gets a chance through its attorneys to respond in writing. And then at some point you may have an oral argument or a hearing with the judge who would then issue his findings, his decision, his or her.
And what kind of timeline are we looking at?
The petition, our petition, has to be filed 30 days with the court. Now, we've already started work on that, but according to the commission's regulations, they actually have to make a written decision of their findings. So that's something, obviously, that we're still waiting to come through. So it would be 30 days from those findings. But my colleague Nick Diaz has already started work on the petition. And
is there any chance that they delay that so that it exceeds 30 days so that you can't file that petition? Can they do that sort of thing?
Oh, no. That type of game playing wouldn't, there wouldn't really be any basis for that whatsoever. These are judicial timelines, and they're not to be played with in such a manner.
Are you confident that something will be done here, that this will be rectified? I mean, often, as you know, government versus government, it's tough. It's tough to take the government to court. Do you think that they, at the end of the day, this will be rectified in Nick's favor?
I'm confident. I really am confident in our case in front of the judicial system. I'm confident because of the facts and the evidence that we put on in the hearing. I think they were compelling, and I think we have good legal arguments for an abuse of discretion on behalf of this commission, and really an abuse of power, and the denial of due process. And we'll bring up everything from the comments on minor objections to their misinterpretation of how the Fifth Amendment interplays with the regulations, and really just an inability to listen to the facts and make an appropriate decision based on those facts. So I am confident, and I wouldn't. I have no basis, but I wouldn't rule out, like in any litigation, the potential chance for some sort of non-judicial resolution prior to a judge issuing his findings. If there were settlement offers on the table or settlement demands, obviously we would listen to anything.
They've received a lot of criticism, a lot of pressure has been put on them. Do you think that will happen?
A settlement? I don't know if it will happen. I can't speak to their frame of mind. I mean, I've had no contact with anyone at the commission since conclusion of the hearing. I've had no contact with Mr. Eccles since the conclusion of the hearing. But if the roles were reversed and I was representing the other side, I always listen to settlement offers or settlement demands, because in a lot of ways you better serve your client in those capacities than fighting for an extended period of time.
And has this evolved into something greater than just the Nick Diaz case? In a sense, you had facts in front of you. You had a case that was a very strong one, in my opinion. But now, when you talk about an abuse of power and ignoring the Fifth Amendment, using that against him, this is something else, right? I mean, is your role now evolving into a much larger case?
I would, as an advocate and somebody who quite often goes up against larger corporations, like I said, I do a lot of work for labor unions with big corporations. I would prefer to see these individuals get some sort of an impartial hearing when these disciplinary complaints are lodged against them. This is their livelihood. This is these fighters' ability to earn a living, and it seems like they're not given a fair hearing before that can either be taken away for a certain amount of years or taken away forever. And that is at odds with the entire concept of just cause. So I would love to see them institute a different type of hearing where there is an impartial third party. But that's a political issue, that's a legislative issue, and I don't know if that's going to happen. The bigger issue here is the drug testing protocol or lack of protocol that the commission uses. As I was digging into this case, I started to realize there were no set protocol on how these tests are administered, the chain of custody requirements. You've got two separate laboratories using two separate collection methods, using two separate testing methodologies. And that was one thing that actually came out in the hearing, was that the Quest lab does what's called an immunoassay screen first. And if it's seeing a number of metabolites at or above the cutoff level, then it goes to a confirmatory analysis. And Dr. Eichner from WADA explained over the phone that they go right to the GCMS, the confirmatory analysis. So there's no set protocol in place. And if I was an athlete or any type of person subject to drug testing, that would scare me. Because consistency in the process results in consistency in the outcome. And there just isn't that consistency at that point. And that's something, when you look at federally mandated drug testing, they are very strict about. There is an entire code of federal regulation just about how you properly collect urine, how it is sent to the lab, and how it is then reviewed by a medical review officer prior to any results being released. You need those layers of protection when you're dealing with something this serious.
You represent the NBA Referees Association. Do you believe, or do you feel, with your limited knowledge now of mixed martial arts, that the fighters need an association like that?
I would think that it would only help them. And outside of compensation and other terms and conditions of employment, one thing, if you formed an association, you'd be governed by the National Labor Relations Act. And the case law under that act says that drug testing, drug and or alcohol testing, is a mandatory subject of bargaining. So that's a subject that the employer has to sit down across the table and iron out with you. And it's a subject that if you can't reach agreement on it, you can then declare an impasse, and either side can resort to self-help. So similar to wages, it is a mandatory subject of bargaining. So that would be one way with which to build some parameters around this and protect these athletes. Like I mentioned, there is no medical review officer at the end of this drug testing process, and that's alarming, because that's a protection that's put in place as a gatekeeper for a medical doctor like Dr. Kella to look at a result from the lab, to call an individual, and to discuss if there's any medically plausible explanation for the result before that result even gets released to anybody else. And that they don't have that here, and that's another alarming issue.
Given their behavior at the hearing, would you like to see these commissioners step down? Do you not think that they should be fit to govern state of Nevada and combat sports?
That's that question's probably a little bit above my pay grade. I obviously would not be the one making those decisions, and I I can't really speak to how they choose to conduct themselves in these hearings, or how they feel like they are allowed to conduct themselves in this hearing. All I can say is that, I hope that going forward, more athletes subject to this have the ability or come prepared to defend themselves and to stand up to what would otherwise seem to be a hostile commission.
A fighter named Henry Cejudo came out and said he will not fight in Nevada anymore as a result of this. Would you advise any fighter that came up to you, any client of yours, to do the same?
That's a very individualized decision for a fighter, because he could be limiting his or her ability to earn. But I will tell you, from an ideological union standpoint, the solidarity in that action is commendable. To stand behind someone in a like position, where you, at least in the short term, could take a financial hit, but you're standing up to fix a bigger problem. I really cannot commend anyone who makes those decisions enough. It's really an amazing gesture.
And what do you make of this White House petition? If this actually does reach 100,000 signatures, e-signatures, if you will, could something really happen here?
There's no telling. The only thing that I don't want to undervalue it, because I think it's wonderful, and again, it's a show of solidarity. But 100,000 signatures gets the White House will review, and they will respond. So at least from a position of bringing more light to this topic and more light to Nick, then I think it can only absolutely have a positive effect. In terms of the White House commanding some sort of overturning of the decision, I don't know. I don't know what to expect on that front.
It's amazing to me, and I know you're relatively new to MMA, that someone like Nick Diaz, again, this sort of anti-establishment figure in our sport, again, another lone wolf, a guy who really has not, he's not been a part of the system, so to speak, has elicited this kind of response and has brought the sport together, from the journalists to the, other commissioners in other states to other fighters. I don't know if you see the irony in that, but it's really an amazing thing that this case has resulted in, and the byproduct of it all.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that one common bond between and why there's been such an outpouring of support, I think, is equity. People want to see other people have a fair hearing. That's what our entire judicial system is built upon. In the criminal context, you're innocent until proven guilty, and American jurisprudence, going back to the very beginning, this concept of we'd rather see 7 guilty men go free than 1 innocent person hang. And that's what our entire system is built upon. And I think that resonates with people. And I think people who watched the hearing came away thinking he didn't get a fair hearing, and they didn't examine the evidence that was presented in front of them. And I really think that rubs people the wrong way. It certainly rubs me the wrong way.
Last question, and again, really appreciate your time. So you mentioned those 30 days. I'm just curious, again, for those of us who don't know about this stuff, what's the next step after that? Can you just kind of lay it all out for us so that we can have some kind of idea what to expect here with this?
Yeah, sure. And I would, the timeline is 30 days is for us to file.
Yeah.
And then the responsive timelines, unfortunately, I have to defer to. I have local counsel in Las Vegas, Nevada, and that's typical when you have an out-of-state attorney coming in. They have to support your petition to practice law in that state for a one-time basis. So they would really be more in tune in terms of the responsive timeline. But like I said earlier, we file our petition, which is a written document, and then we would serve that on the commission as well. And then the commission's attorneys have a chance to then respond again in writing. And at some point, whatever judge is assigned to the matter would hold some sort of oral argument or a hearing, and then thereafter issue a written decision on the matter.
All right. We will stay tuned. Again, thank you so much for the time. Tremendous work last weekend in Las Vegas. It was a real pleasure after, I don't know if you heard of the Anderson Silva hearing a month prior, after that debacle, to see, a team actually come well prepared and ready and with some facts to back up their claims, some legitimate Facts. It was real refreshing in our sport to see that. So well done to you and the team, and looking forward to the next steps and hopefully seeing this whole thing play out the way it should have played out.
Thanks for the kind words, and I really appreciate you having me on.
All right, there he is, Lucas Middlebrook, the attorney for one Nick Diaz. I feel weird about the whole thing because it does feel like, when you're a journalist and you're supposed to be impartial, as we are expected to be, you're not supposed to be biased, and you're not supposed to have a take, and you're not supposed to ask certain questions or in certain directions. And I feel weird because it's clear how I feel about the issue, but I can't help myself. It just feels like the right thing. It feels like this. How does anyone else not see that what transpired a week ago in Las Vegas was completely wrong? It was so disappointing to watch, so frustrating. It was corrupt. It was, in my opinion, criminal what was done to him, to take away his livelihood for 5 years and essentially almost ending his career. What other than criminal comes to mind, right? Unbelievable. Anyway, let's move along. Final guest of the day. Always great to have him on the show. Always love talking to him. Always love hearing his voice. We're talking about the California kid, Urijah Faber, who joins us on line number one. Uriah, are you there?
I am. What's up, dude?
Do you share my sentiment here about the whole Nick Diaz thing? I don't know how much you've been following it, but it's really.
I wasn't listening to the show before getting on, but just caught the very tail end. And dude, first off, I mean, Nick and I are friends. I met him when he was running a triathlon my girlfriend was doing in 2003 or 2004, and the guy's a stand-up. He's an misunderstood guy. He's not the best with voicing himself. He's got some issues, but I mean, he's a good person, and I mean, it really bothers me what they're trying to do to him.
Yeah, it's really disgusting, and hopefully he has, it seems like he has a good team behind him, and this thing will get rectified. I do think it brings up a larger issue in our sport, but that's a different discussion for a different day. That's not why we have you on the show today. You got a lot going on. You're returning to action on December 11th. You're on The Ultimate Fighter. But in particular, I wanted to have you on the show because late last week on FoxSports.com, your old pal, your former coach, Dwayne Bang Ludwig, essentially kind of issued this open apology to you. But to be honest, it was one of those apologies where it was like, yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you my take. It was one of those like, if I did anything wrong, I'm sorry, which sometimes isn't the best apology. And I don't know, it's often not received very well. I want to get your take on it. Do you think it was a good apology? Are you happy with the apology? Are you ready to move on?
Oh my gosh, man. Because you and I have talked offline before, and I said, hey, don't be this. I'm trying to, fly under the radar with this. The drama I've had to go through with this guy, and it's so unfortunate because, I tried to help this guy. And an apology is not an apology because you said the word apology, and a joke is not a joke just because the person who says it laughs. It's not a harmless joke, and you don't get to live in your own reality. And this guy comes out, and I find out today, actually, that one of the guys that had gone out there because didn't want to leave TJ on his own when TJ was going to go out and train for a little bit, had gone out there, had told Dwayne, I just found this out today after practice, that he wasn't going to go out there anymore because of what he's trying to do to our team. He's trying to rip it apart. And but not everybody knows that Dwayne, half-heartedly, delusionally tried to sue the team, which was bizarre, the week before my fight with Frankie Edgar. And then he openly says these things about our team, which is hilarious because he hasn't been with the team for a year and a half, but he's still holding on to dear life, about how no one trains like a champion, which is super ironic and weird for him to say that when he's not around the team for a year and a half. And then he gets the news that this guy's not going to go out with him. There's only, one guy that really has been trained with him, and I don't ever want to, take anything away from the guys. But that's why, and Dwayne says, I'm going to make it right. So that's why Dwayne tries to do this apology, and in doing it, just makes a bunch of false accusations about me, a bunch of stuff that is not true, and just slanders me and says, and I apologize if I ever did anything. You want to talk specifics. I've been trying to take the higher road with this guy that's been trying to break the team down. But, I mean, I can talk about some specifics. I said, dysfunction follows the guy, and the guy's a bully. And, I mean, it's unfortunate, man. I really tried to help this guy out, and, from giving him advice and helping building his brand on, teaching him about a lot of different things, giving him an opportunity to work with great athletes, which he did a great job. I mean, the reason you bring a coach in is to learn from him. We still use some of the stuff that he shows, but just the blatant, like, ex-girlfriend mentality, like crazy ex-girlfriend of, like, trying to break the team down is just bizarre to me. I don't get it.
Okay, I want to try to start at the beginning of when this all started to unravel because, from our perspective, I remember during, the heyday of Bang and Alpha Male, we were celebrating Coach of the Year. You guys were kicking ass. It all looked great. And then all of a sudden we find out that, he's leaving and we don't really know why. He's going to open his gym starters thing, which is, you find you can respect that back home in Colorado. From your perspective, when did things start to go south? When did it all start to change for you?
Well, I saw the article that Dwayne put out, which was basically that there was problems from the beginning.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask you that.
To be honest with you, so I had a couple of lists of guys, and I hate to see. I'm a guy that likes to help people, dude. I built this team. I've funded this team. I've put in my time and sweat equity, and I like to help people in general. I do things all the time to help folks, and I'll put money in my guys' pockets or do stuff for charity. I mean, I like to do that stuff. Dwayne was a guy, and when he was on a short list of guys that I was checking with for coaching, Mark Delagrati has his gym and has his family out in Boston, and talked to Phil Nurse. He has his stuff in New York. Mark Hominick his wife has a great job, and he has a gym out there, and he couldn't really move. And I talked to Dwayne, and Dwayne doesn't have a house. He doesn't have a gym. He actually confides to me that he's on his last leg for money because the UFC had screwed him on, didn't give him some bonus or a smaller bonus and all this stuff. And he's, he has like 3 affiliates that pay him $100 a month sometimes, but not very dependable. And he said, oh, what great timing, et cetera, et cetera. And I hate to see that. A guy who's put in a lot of guys didn't know who he was on our team. TJ didn't even know who he was, but I did. I mean, I've been a fan of the sport, and Dwayne was a good fighter. Striking especially was really good, and just I hate to see a guy that's broke and out on the street after putting his life into something. So I thought this would be a great opportunity. Right off the bat, right off the bat, I go to a Glory fight in Las Vegas, and one of the guys that trains out with Dwayne in Colorado is like, "Hey man, he was another coach that was coaching out there where all those guys were at. He goes, I just want to warn you, Dwayne's gangster about money." And I was like, haha, yeah. I mean, what do you mean? He's like, I'm just telling you, he'll like fight people over money. He gets really weird about money. And I'm thinking, I've never had an issue with anybody about money anyways. So I'm like, not a big deal, whatever. I'm like, okay, well, thanks. I mean, we're just happy to have him. He seems like a good guy, etc. Oh my gosh, is that foreshadowing, dude? Unbelievable. So the first conversation I have with Dwayne is on the phone. I'm like, hey, Dwayne, I just landed because I was on a trip, and Master Tong was an amazing trainer, but his dependability broke down. He started losing guys' trust because he wasn't always showing up. He was an amazing striking coach. He's coached boxing champions and kickboxing champions and MMA champions, but his dependability and his just general availability was not there. He was, for about a year and a half, he was kind of like an absentee stand-up coach. So I said, hey, dude, we're looking for someone to come in. I mean, do you have a house? Do you have a gym? What's your situation like now? And that's when he kind of confides in me. And I said, I'd like to have you out to come check out the team. I said, to be honest with you, this is the first time we'll have funded for a team, for a coach on our own. And at this time, we did such a great job of building the guy up. People forget. I was a number 1 contender at this time. I just lost to Barao in a decision fight. TJ was in my corner because Master Tong wasn't able to come to Canada, and TJ had, know everything that Master Tong had liked. Could hold mitts like him, could do everything. He worked with me and Phil Nurse when I had Phil Nurse out. Me and TJ worked together. So TJ was my main corner guy in that thing because he was my main training partner and had done everything that I had done and knew me like the back of his hand. Joseph had just lost a title fight. Chad Mendes had just lost a title fight. We had the number one finish rate in the whole sport for Team Alpha Male. And I said, Dwayne, look, dude, we have the best team in the world. I think, it'd be a compliment to our style. We'd love to learn some more stand-up and just someone that kind of oversees, like, being there every day, committed, because I'm traveling a lot, and a lot of guys are traveling. We have other coaches, but be good. And he's like, oh, yeah. And so he comes out, does like 2 days with us, and I'm like, sounds good to me. This is the first time I've done this. So we start talking on the phone. I said, look, this is what we can offer. Last year, and this is the year when I fought one time in 13 months, and I'm the top breadwinner for the team at this point for sure. I fought one time in 13 months, and as far as money raised from contributions from the team, it was far below what we were going to offer him as a coach. And I said, we had a bad year this last year. Joseph sat out and had that one fight, and Chad had the one title fight, and I had my title fight, and I only got to fight in 1 month. I said, judging on that, this is what we'll be able to afford paying you, which was a good salary, especially for a guy that had no money coming in, as he acclaimed, and was in a hard spot. And I said, we can do something where, it's this salary or 5% of purses, whichever is larger, And I said, and I talked to all the guys, and no one was willing to give up their discretionary bonuses except for me, which turned out to be a huge problem because discretionary bonuses, no one knows you get them. They become discretionary, right? Mm-hmm. So then I say, Dwayne, because I've funded this team anyways, and I always contribute more because this is my team, I will contribute my discretionary bonuses because sometimes they're large to make sure that we meet that salary, so we get to that point, so that we have enough, and also, when the 5% gets bigger, we get the greater then you can have that. She's like, okay. I put all this in writing, salary, everything else. Seriously, like 2 days later, Dwayne calls me and wants more money, and I'm like, okay, and I'm like, whatever. It was weird. He called and said he wanted more money. I said, I know, but Dwayne, we can't. I mean, this is what we made last year. Danny Castillo was actually the top contributor to the team that year because he fought like 4 or 5 times in the year. And TJ was, I think, ranked number 7, but still on that Ultimate Fighter contract, but, a killer in the gym. Chris Holdsworth had just won the Ultimate Fighter, hadn't really started getting paid yet. Paige was not even in the picture. Cody wasn't even in the picture. Feely wasn't even making money yet. So it was like, we're at a point where I said, dude, this is what we can afford. I said, if you can't do it, you can't do it. He's like, okay, no, that's fine, whatever. So he comes, and I told him, I said, look, dude, this is what I plan on doing, man. I'm going to blow your name up. I said, I'm going to make a huge deal about this thing. I'm going to, reach all the media. We're going to do a press release, and we're going to build you as this hero, like guy comes in and get you on interviews, do this and do that. I said, when that starts happening, you're going to get opportunities. I said, you can get your own sponsors. You can get, you can do seminars. I think really building your brand, this will be good for it. And you said you have your affiliate program, and you can start blowing that up. And so he's like, yeah, getting all excited about it, whatever. The guy comes out. He comes out and starts teaching classes, and he's doing a great job. The first fight he corners someone is Danny Castillo. And so he corners Danny Castillo, and you guys can go back and watch the tape on this. Danny is, I think, maybe the first one on the live card, but he's not the first prelim. There's a guy in the first prelim. There's a guy that is like one of the pikey, like, gypsy guys. I forget the guy's name. He's like known for being kind of a gypsy.
Gypsy? From
UK. Yeah.
From where?
Like from the UK.
Oh.
I forget his name.
Yes, okay.
Elias.
You go ahead, yep.
Anyways, so that guy's the first fight on the card, and he's wearing a Fear the Fighter shirt. So a half an hour before Danny goes to fight, because Dwayne had just got there, he doesn't have any sponsors yet. He has his peanut butter sponsor, and he has a booster sponsor where they give him gloves, and Dwayne is getting like free peanut butter, and so, which he starts selling peanut butter at the front desk at our gym, right, when he first starts getting there. So he goes to the fight, the very first fight, cornering the guy, and 30 minutes before the fight, he goes and finds the Fear the Fighter guys and says, hey, guys, for $250, I'll wear a Fear the Fighter shirt in the corner of Danny. He sells it. I got Danny Castillo. He's fighting on this card. It's going to be on the prelim here, blah, 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 this and that. I'll do this, whatever. So he comes out, and I didn't know this because it was 30 minutes before the fight. I see him coming out, and he's wearing that guy's signature shirt. So the very first fight on the card, he's got that guy's name in a Fear the Fighter shirt while Danny's got his own sponsors going on. And so it's just kind of awkward, but I'm like, okay, you know, he can wear his own sponsor. Doesn't bother us, right? If it doesn't bother Danny, that's fine.
Right.
So he gets himself $250 to wear this shirt to walk out. So I'm like, okay, this is like just the very beginning of it. Then he's back in the gym and he's getting his salary, and then he starts charging everybody for privates, right? And like there's a point where TJ's like, man, I don't know what to do, man. Dwayne's like bleeding me. He's like, I'm doing his videos for him after class. I'm doing this, and he's still charging me for privates. I need to have a talk with him. After that, TJ starts, has a talk with him, and he's like charging him. And I'm like, I feel bad for the guy. He's selling peanut butter at the front desk. He's like, doing all these things to make extra cash. He's leaving every single weekend to go do a seminar, even if it's for a couple $100. I'm like, dude, I appreciate the hustle, but like, let's just settle down. Let's let the apple grow into a ripe red apple before you start trying to like pull it off the tree when it's green and sour. Like give it some time. So he keeps wanting to have business discussions with me, and I keep telling him this. I'm like, Dwayne, instead of $250 for a shirt, why don't you pump up your own brand? This kind of thing. So then it comes to my first fight that he corners me, and I'm like, I have my partner Scott, who's in Texas, who owns Torque, and so Dwayne wants to wear his own shirt in my corner with a conflicting brand, Fear the Fighter, instead of Torque, or instead of his own shirt, Dwayne, or the peanut butter, or Booster, or whatever it is. I said, Dwayne, I said, dude, my partner's going to be pissed off. Like, I didn't okay this with him. If you wear another brand, like no one talked to him, he's going to be pissed. I said, can you wear like a Dwayne Bang shirt or one of your other sponsors or something like that? He's like, yeah. I said, if you want, this is 30 minutes before I'm about to go fight my fight. I can't remember who I was fighting against. I got a submission in the first round. I can't remember who it was. But so I said, but you know what? Here, dude, here's his phone number. If you can call him and get the okay from him, granted, this is 30 minutes before I'm about to go out and fight for my fight, and this is the first time having him in the corner. If you can go out and get him to, if you can talk to my partner and get him to okay wearing the shirt, then you're good, So he goes and calls, and apparently I didn't find this out till afterwards. He tries to shake down my partner for $300. He's like trying to get my guy to pay him $300 to wear my shirt, this and that. And I'm like, I didn't know till way later when my partner told me, and I'm like, it just was baffling me. So he ends up wearing a Dwayne Bang shirt or one of his other sponsors, or an Inside Out shirt or something like that. He doesn't wear the conflicting thing. Doesn't say anything to me. And then this is where the animosity starts. So then he, when he came here, he said, Uriah, you told me when I got here you were going to get me sponsors. And I'm like, dude, I had to go over this with him 4 times in the year he was there. That I never said I was going to get him sponsors. I said, dude, you could get your own sponsors. I never told you I had sponsors ready for you. I mean, none of our guys had residual sponsors going, at the time. It was a hard time, especially in the sport. And I had no idea that he even thought that I was supposed to get him sponsors, or he even said that. So he has, and I said I would introduce you to my managers who are, could maybe help you if you want to talk to them. He's like, oh, I don't do managers. I've got a manager. I don't sign contracts, blah, blah, whatever. I said, okay, fine. So then he brings out his manager at the time, and we all have a meeting, and he's like, you said you were going to get me sponsors, blah, 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 this and that, blah, blah. And I said, Dwayne, I never said you were going to get you sponsors, and, like, I don't know where you're getting that from. He's like, the first time we talked, you said I could have my own sponsors, and I'm like, yeah, you can have your own sponsor. He's like, well, you didn't let me wear my shirt in your corner. Well, like, this is where all the animosity from him comes from, is that he wasn't able to wear his shirt in that corner for the very first time. And I'm like, Okay, I said, well, we can do it. We just have to okay it before, not 30 minutes prior, and you can wear anything else you want, but just, we have to okay things. Like, if the UFC doesn't want you to wear something, you can't wear it either. Like, there's a process to go through, et cetera. He's like, okay. So we talked about that, and I got the misunderstanding out of the way. Then on top of this, he's being really, really nice, thanking for the opportunity, and it's amazing to work with all these athletes, and, like, being real nice, and sometimes he's not, and he's asking me for business advice. And I mean, I had to do, for as far as business advice goes, I had to tell him first off, he did an article where he's talking about how he first watches tape normal, and then he gets super high and watches the tape again. And I'm like, look, Dwayne, if you're trying to build a brand and trying to get affiliates that are going to be teaching kids, it's probably not the best thing to be overly promoting the fact that you spend a lot of time doing illegal substances, or not illegal in Colorado now, but doing stuff that some kids may not want. I said, I mean, great if you want to do that, just don't make it a focal point of your success. And he's like, oh yeah, I get you here. He's asking me about a bunch of different stuff with how do he build himself. I said, building relationships with the media is great. Getting on as much media as possible and talking about your brand, wearing your brand instead of wearing other people's brand, even if they pay you $200, look at the bigger picture. These are all things I had talks and mentoring him, got all the guys to pump up his stuff, etc. Right? So, it becomes a thing where I'm he's my coach. I'm kind of his boss. I'm trying to be a counselor for the guy because he's upset about all these different things. He's misinterpreting things like saying that I was supposed to get him a bunch of sponsors. What does that mean? I can just up and make the sponsors out of the blue. So this is where there started to be a little bit of a disconnect. But it still is fine. We're still working together, et cetera. Just on occasion these things would come up. So that's the very beginning of it. All right. And then, as far as the culture of our team goes, our culture is what's made our team great, man. It's been a really giving place. It's been where it's a co-op. It's we help each other out. We beat the crap out of each other, but it's a fun environment. It's a helpful environment. And that was the first thing that I saw as a negative effect from him, and I had to talk to him on a number of occasions. And as far as the bullying thing goes, it was pretty bad, man. It was a bad issue, and I had to talk to him a couple times about it.
What do you mean by that when you say bullying?
So, and it wasn't necessarily. It was never with any of the guys that were top dogs on the team. It was the guys that were not the top dogs on the team. I had a girl from Alaska that says that Dwayne keeps on saying these comments to me. And first off, Dwayne refused to work with any females. He said, I just want to tell you, I'm not supporting women's MMA. I won't be working with anybody. I'm not going to work with Paige. I'm not going to work with this and Nikki. I'm not going to work with Veronica. I don't believe in it. And I'm like, okay, that was an issue. The second thing was he was saying racial things. And that's what I say when you say things are jokes. They're not jokes just because you laughed at them, especially if they're hurtful things. So I had two of the African American guys on our team that had approached me and said, this is getting real uncomfortable. It's funny one time, I guess, when he says stuff like, all right, all the black guys at the end of the line, but he's saying it every single day. And then one guy said, every single time I'm in the gym and I'm talking to a girl, Dwayne will yell across the gym, hey, so-and-so, 25 feet, all black guys 25 feet from the females. And he says, I get if he thinks it's funny, whatever, but he keeps doing it. It's really getting on my nerves. So I had to talk to Dwayne about that. I had to talk to him about the girls. I had to talk to him about not breaking people down. One girl from Alaska said that, Dwayne keeps saying, you're pretty terrible and you should just quit. And I'm like, and she goes, I know he starts laughing like he's joking, but I know he's serious. And, she wasn't the best girl on the team. There was some, it was mean is what it was. So I had to talk to him about that. Then on the outside, I had another guy. He had kind of more of a karate style, and Dwayne was always picking on him because of his kicks or whatever. Wasn't the way he liked it, and he said something to me. On top of that, I had my managers, who Dwayne basically struck a little fear into. One time, my one manager was talking, and Dwayne told him to shut the F up when he's talking, and it got like real awkward and silent, and my manager said, "Don't talk to me like that." And then Dwayne said something like, "Well, don't, when I'm speaking, you don't speak," that kind of thing, which I had to talk to him about that. Then there's my other manager where he showed up. Dwayne would only show up for the day of the fight. He wouldn't show up for the week prior because, he was doing seminars or didn't want to lose money or whatever. So he would only show up until it was time for him to leave. Then he started showing up for the week to do all the media. He would only show up the day of the fight. So he wouldn't go and help prep, do the weight cut or anything like that. He'd go the day of the fight. He'd do a seminar in the morning, and then he would show up at the venue to corner you, right? So he shows up the day of a fight, and we've all been there, and he has no affiliation with my managers. I introduced him to my managers. He told them he doesn't need managers. He doesn't sign contracts. He'll do it. He has someone he's dealing with already. They don't have any obligation to him whatsoever. So he gets to the venue on the day of the fight and doesn't have his room set up, which is not our manager's job to get his room set up. And he sees my manager in the hallway and basically makes my manager very uncomfortable. And I get a call from him and says, "I don't know what Dwayne's deal is. He's a loose cannon. He's got in my face because he didn't have a room." He's like, "That's not my obligation." But he's like, he's a scary guy, and I'm not a fighter. I'm not trying to fight the guy. So I talked to Dwayne again. Dwayne says, "Oh, I was just joking." It's not a joke just because you think it's funny, right? Mm-hmm. So the last one was a UFC executive. So this guy is like an instrumental guy in my career. Someone that really helped me out. He's been a big part of the UFC and just a good guy all around. And Dwayne had wanted some tickets from the guy, and so he asked if he could hook him up with some tickets because he had two friends coming to town, etc. And later find out that the guy actually went through and tried to do it, but didn't go through. You either get yayed or nayed for tickets. Dwayne sees him in the hallway, and the guy's with his wife, and he gets uncomfortably close to him, and he starts saying stuff about the tickets, and then he puts his hands on the guy. And the guy trains MMA, and he's not a scared guy, and basically sticks up for himself. He's in front of his wife, etc., and just calls me distraught and said, "I'm just gonna let you know, Dwayne's gonna. I'm gonna have. If I report this, Dwayne will not be allowed to coach anyone. There's a real strict rule about people touching executives, and he got in my face and was trying to punk me because of some tickets, and I don't even know. I did try to give him the tickets. I didn't even know they didn't go through, and this and that. So I had to take Dwayne aside, and I had to say, Dwayne, you're on the verge of getting kicked out as a coach. You can't be bullying people because you want things. If you want something and someone can't do it, it's not your opportunity to go and intimidate them." And so this guy, I actually talked him out of turning Dwayne in, and talked to Dwayne, and Dwayne went and apologized to the guy. But like that kind of thing right there, Dwayne again says he was joking. It's not jokes if you're intimidating people and making people feel uncomfortable and you're saying racial things, etc. Then on top of that, my best friend, and the one, it's a showing thing that the 1 year that Dwayne was there was the only time we haven't had a team banquet, which is a tradition for 5 years. It's the one time because Dwayne, and I'll get into this in a second, had changed the contract and ended up getting paid almost double what we had agreed to because he started crying and talking about how he struggled his whole life and he's not going to be struggling now, and like begging the guys to give him more and using me as an example of somebody that's paid more, giving my discretionary bonuses to the pot and like this and that. And so the guys are convinced to pay more. So this is the first year where, we're getting all of our money taken by Dwayne. He's selling peanut butter and his T-shirts and everything else at the front desk. He's charging people for privates. He's manipulating people into giving their discretionary bonuses. Guys like Chris Holdsworth, who's struggling, just barely making his way as a brand new guy in the sport, like giving him guilt trips about giving his discretionary bonuses and just mooching money like like a leech, man. It's unbelievable. So he starts bullying my best friend who has helped build this team just out of the kindness of his heart, and his wife. I get a call from my best friend's wife that says, I don't know what Dwayne's thing is. I tried to talk to him. He looked right at me and wouldn't speak to me. And I said, I was like, really? That's strange. She said, yeah. And I tried to call him. He won't respond to my calls. He won't respond to my texts. And, he just like ignores me. And I'm like, and she's the one that actually hands him his check, right? So, which is the problem, apparently. Anybody that hands him money becomes the enemy. So I say, okay, this is weird. So I asked Dwayne, I said, Dwayne, is there something wrong with so-and-so? And he just says, yeah, I don't like her energy. And I'm like, I said, I've never had anyone have an issue with her before. And so-and-so, said that you won't even look her at the eyes. And she asked to, like, give you things and things like that. And he's like, I don't like her. I don't like her energy. I'm not going to talk to her. And I said, oh, okay. Just left it at that, So, this is all the stuff I'm talking about with bullying, man. It's taking and taking. And because you've read my book about my brother, if you've actually read my book. I don't know. We'll see. But
why do you have to go there? Really? How many times do I have to prove myself? Please continue.
Yeah. Anyways.
Can I ask you this? What was the straw that broke the camel's back for you? What was the tipping point? What was the end? Was there something, or was it a mix of everything?
This is what happened. This is a very busy time for me, right? I had to go to the Philippines, Australia, and I had to go to Philippines, Australia, and Dubai, all in a short period of time. And I had been absent a bunch. I had coached the Ultimate Fighter. I'd been doing a lot of different things. So I've been gone a bunch. So what starts happening is this, and I saw this happening, and I started getting these reports, etc. And so Dwayne, so I told you the big inherent thing. So the first thing that Dwayne thinks was wrong was that I told him I would get him sponsors, and I didn't, which is completely a figment of his imagination. The second thing is this. 3 months in, he changes the contract, which he refuses to sign because he doesn't sign contracts, which was all in his best favor anyways, and comical, right? So there's two tipping points. There's one tipping point, which is when I realized that Dwayne is only in this for himself and he's not going to be part of the team. And then the second one, when I decided to talk about it right now, because you and I have talked about this before, and you agreed. I said, hey, I'm just going to take the high road. It's kind of taking care of itself. He's gone in his own way. But the guy keeps needling and needling. So the first one was this. So a week before I left to the Philippines for a media tour, Dwayne, and this is the second time he'd done this, Dwayne brings me in. There's 5 fights that I had in 13 months, and I had 3 submissions, one decision, and then 1 loss to Barao, right? Mm-hmm. For the second time we fought. During that time, I had renegotiated a contract and got bumped up considerably. And so 2 of those fights, I didn't get a discretionary bonus. Mm. So, so Dwayne doesn't, when you get a discretionary bonus, it just comes directly to you. So Dwayne, in his mind, starts getting this delusions that I'm lying to him about some discretionary bonuses. And so he said something to me before. Hey, you're right. You said that that you were going to give me discretionary bonuses, and I didn't know if you got one for the last fight. And I said, no, I didn't get one for the last fight. I didn't get one for the last 2 fights. And I said, but you've trained this contract. You're getting almost double what you had had agreed to come here for, because you're getting the salary on top of a percentage of fight purses now, which instead of whichever was greater, right? And the guys decided to do that. He was doing a good job at the time, and I said, I'm always for guys getting compensated. I'm the one that overpays, and that's been traditionally how I've done it, and that's how I built this team, right? So I'm like, okay, if these guys want to agree to that, that's okay. We just have to make sure that we can meet the salary amount. And so the week before I left, Dwayne brings me in, and he used to always ask me for business advice, like when I told him to stop promoting these smoking weed for his coaching abilities, and like to stop, getting $250 to wear somebody's T-shirt and building his own brand. So this new thing is like he comes in, and I'd already had a couple issues with him because he had started, now that he was getting some real notoriety, he was gone during the week. He wasn't working with anybody now that he was getting a percentage of purses, he wasn't working with anybody that didn't have a big purse. So he was only working with me and TJ and a couple of the other guys, on top of not working with the girls, etc. And then he was getting himself sponsors at this point and like basically pimping people out. He would get paid and he'd like take pictures of other people with his stuff. He'd like, hey, can you wear this shirt for me? And hey, can you do this? And you can do that. So there's 3 different issues. So he brings me in and he says, hey man, I wanted to ask you some business advice. This is the first time I've had money in the bank. And I was like, oh man, that's awesome, dude. Because, I mean, this whole time with all these issues, we're still super cordial and he's thankful and I'm thankful, etc. So he brings me in, and this is the week before the split happens. And Chad was supposed to fight Jose Aldo at this time for the title, and then Aldo got injured, so they had to push it back. But so he comes in and he says, I wanted to ask you about flipping houses. And I go, okay, cool. And then he says, it's the first time I had money, and I wanted to ask you about flipping houses. And I said, to be honest with you, I've never really flipped a house. I've only bought them and held them. But I mean, if I know a little bit about it, if I were you, this is the best thing to do. Buy the worst house in the best neighborhood, but do your due diligence and blah, blah. He started talking. He goes, and then he cuts me off, and he says, I think you're effing lying to me. And I'm like, huh? He goes, I know you got bonuses. I know you got bonuses. I mean, you're lying to me. I've got bonuses for every single fight, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's like totally takes me off guard. And I'm like, whoa, like what's going on here, man? He's like, I know you're lying to me. I know you have bonuses. And I'm like, and Grant, this guy's, has an unstable upbringing, which we've talked about, and I've tried to help him, understand some things. And he's been a fighter for years. He's, all these different things. He's basically conjured up in his head. I'm like, okay, well, how much do you think I got? And he's like, at least $50,000 to $100,000. And I'm like, okay, so you think I just, and you can ask Dana or Lorenzo, the guys, whoever cuts the check, there's 2 fights that I didn't get bonuses for during that 5-fight year. And I'm like, no. And so I call my manager with him there, and I say, hey, didn't tell him that Dwayne's in the room or anything. I said, hey, did I get any discretionary bonuses for the last 2 fights? And like, no. And then Dwayne's like, whatever. And I go, okay, thanks, just checking. Hang up. Dwayne's like, I think you're lying to me. I've gotten a bonus for every single fight I've ever had, blah, 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 this and that. And I go, Dwayne, I don't know what to tell you, bro. So he leaves to do a private. I get on a phone call, and I'm like, whatever. I have to leave the next day at 3 o'clock. And I go to Dubai, and I go to Australia. When I come back, I hear grumblings that Dwayne is opening his own gym. And so he's gone. At this point, he's been gone he's getting paid a salary and then percentages to be there coaching at the gym. And he's gone now all the time doing seminars. He's leaving during the week, and he's having people fill in. He's not coaching the team anymore. He's only, picking the fruit that has finally blossomed, right? We've been building up his name, and the team's been winning and all this stuff. So he's doing seminars and got him, experiences for his sponsors during the week when we need a coach, right? And so I want to talk to him about not bullying people, about, the things that he's saying to the guys that are making them uncomfortable, the African-American guys, about not getting himself sponsors and making other people wear them and basically pimping them out and taking the money and making other people wear your stuff, and then being there during the week. When you're supposed to be getting paid to be there during the week, don't be going in seminars for a week at a time in this place and in that place when we need to be coached, But then I heard through the grapevine that he's opened his own gym, and I don't know whether he's doing it in Sacramento or what. So I said, I call him when he's out doing a seminar, and I get back on a Wednesday, and I say, Dwayne, when you get back, I need to talk to you, man. We need to talk about a couple different things. He goes, okay, yeah. I said, when are you back? And he says, I'm back on this day. I said, okay, well, let's meet after practice. And so we go in and meet, And throughout our relationship, it's been really weird. I told you, I played counselor for the guy. And so, I mean, I feel like the guy cried to me all the time. He'd cry when he was sad. He'd cry when he's happy. He'd talk about something. He'd start crying, you know? And I'm like, it was like kind of a strange thing. So I come in, and we have this meeting. I say, hey, Dwayne, remember we're supposed to have that meeting? He said, oh, yeah, okay. So we go in the room. I said, I have a couple things I want to talk to you about, which was being there during the week, working with everyone and giving everyone attention, not just the guys that are getting paid, and you know, stopping with the bullying. And I said, but first, I just heard through the grapevine, and this is, I have this meeting, everyone else goes to eat. TJ, Joseph, you know, everyone goes to go eat. And a lot of times we eat after practice together. We all go to Crateville or whatever and just meet up. So they go, I go, hey guys, I'm gonna have this meeting. I'll meet you guys there afterwards. Talk to Dwayne. I said, and he goes, he immediately starts crying and he says, yes, I'm leaving. I'm opening my own gym. He goes, he goes, I knew I was gonna do this the moment you didn't get me sponsors. And it's like 3 months into our relationship. And I'm like, what? I'm like, Dwayne, I never told you I was going to get you a bunch of sponsors. He's like, no. I've always just wanted to do my own gym. I mean, that's not it. And he's like crying at this point. And he's like, I said, well, when were you going to tell me this? Are you going to tell me that we had, that you were going to leave us? And he's like, well, and he didn't know how much I knew, right? So he starts fessing up about stuff. He's like, well, I had signed the lease in December, but I didn't realize, he didn't understand about leases and down payments, and he was going to try to buy a place, and that place didn't work out. So it had been 6 months since he had tried to do his first gym and not tell me about it. And I'm like, you know, we got Chad up here who's going to fight for the world title. It makes sense that he's leaving all the time. He's only showing up for the day of a fight and doing a seminar on the day and then showing up at the arena. He's like doing all the media he can to promote his own business. And basically, I'm sitting there going, dude, were you going to even tell me, like, give us a heads up or anything? He's like, well, you know, I wanted to get a title under my belt first, and then leave. And I'm like, well, you know, because Chad's about to fight, and I'm like, dude, really? Is that the case? So I'm like, I said, dude, you know, it would be nice if you would keep me in the know about this kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm baffled. I go, all right, dude. I said, here's the deal. You know, the fights on schedule right now are Chad's fight, which ends on this date, and I think it was someone else's fight that ends on that day. I said, that'll be, you know, you get 2 months to finish up the coaching obligations, and then you can do your thing. But, like, I need to start looking for another coach because you're going to leave us high and dry and not tell us. He's like, oh, okay. So then I go back and I go to meet the guys at lunch, and I'm like, dude, I just found out that Dwayne is planning on leaving. It makes sense that he's not, you know, never at the gym anymore, and that he's only working with guys that pay him. He's trying to do a financial raise so he can, you know, get enough money to start his gym, and he's been planning this for 7 months. I'm like, and then TJ goes, yeah, you know, TJ was like in the know a little bit. He said, yeah, he's been trying to do that for like 6 months. He almost signed a lease and this and that, and like basically, I'm like, dude, I had no idea, you know. So I go back and I just put an ad out, and I said, hey, I didn't mention Dwayne's name at all. I said, looking for a new striking coach, looking for a new coach, and I said all the attributes of our team. We have this person, this person, this person, this person, and the person needs to be able to whatever, right? So I go back and Dwayne's all upset, right? That I basically put that ad out there, because he got a call from you, I think. He got a call from other people that are saying, hey, are you leaving Team Alpha Male? Like, what's going on? And he's like, you know, how could you, you know, tell people? I said, dude, I didn't say anything. All I said is we're looking for a coach, you know, et cetera. So then Chad's fight gets put off, and Dwayne's plans fall through for his first building. And so he asked me if he can stay around and help coach in the next, you know, the 2 months go by, and his building and his plans didn't go through because he was going to try to buy a building, but he didn't realize that he had to put this amount down, and then, you know, the credit and like all these different things. He's like learning about business, right? And so he makes this thing. I said, dude, you're welcome to stay here. Because like I said, the whole thing's been dysfunctional, but we've pushed through it. And on top of that, I've never put any of this in the face of the guys because I don't want to mess with their mentality. I never put it in anybody's face because I'm just trying to keep things cordial on the team. But so I'm like, okay, this is this is the point where the parts, we have to split, right? And I still am able, keeping it all under wraps and not saying any of the problems that have happened, etc. And just going around continuing to let Dwayne, be a coach on the team and take credit for things and et cetera, et cetera. So then a year and a half later, a week before I'm about to fight Frankie Edgar, and Dwayne had been slowly trying to break the team apart. Right? He was once it was known that he was going to leave, he started kissing everybody's butt. He's promoting everybody. He's got guys promoted that are tough wrestlers and giving them purple belts in their whatever his karate or his kickboxing is, and on par with guys that are seasoned fighters, and most of the guys are just okay, we'll see what's going on here. He starts being real nice to everyone because he realizes okay, he's going to have to, his livelihood at this point, he's making money off of his affiliates now, which are 10 or 12 deep, who I'm sure he's, just milking for cash every which way. He's doing all these different things. So he starts kissing everyone's butt. And meanwhile, I'm traveling all over the world, for my obligations to Abu Dhabi, et cetera, et cetera. And I come back, and a year and a half later, I get a letter from Dwayne, who refuses to come back in our gym apparently because we had, one of our top dogs asked him to come back, and he said, no, I'm here trying to build my gym, etc. And I was still going to let him back in the gym. I'm like, you know what? I never put anything public. If Dwayne really wants to, be cordial and it's a mentally stable thing for the guy who wants him to train him, then let's go ahead and let him do that, etc. So I'm still trying to be cordial. I'm not putting him on blast about any of these things I've had issues with. And I get a friggin' letter a week before my fight with Frankie Edgar from a lawyer who's his email was kickboxer, Asian kickboxer 101. And it's the most delusional claim, basically saying he's going to sue the team. So Dwayne says he's going to sue our team, which is this. I was offered a contract, which I did not sign, but I did my obligations and helped the team grow. And in turn, I grew as well. But, I am going to ask that there was $100,000 in discretionary bonuses, which is a figment of his imagination, which is hilarious. That is owed to Dwayne, and he feels like he's entitled to that contract. A contract which he changed because 3 months in, we agreed to pay him more. If he wanted to enforce that contract, he would owe me probably $40,000 because he was overpaid according to that contract. On top of that, he demands 5% because that's what was in the contract of a discretionary bonus, which didn't exist, which was a figment of his imagination. And he calculates that to be $25,000. So this lawyer he had draw this up says, I want to enforce this contract he didn't sign. The contract which was changed 3 months in, he got paid double of. Then he thinks there's $100,000, which is a figment of his imagination. He would like 5% of that, which is $25,000. I mean, do the math, Ariel, on $100,000 for 5%. And so I'm like, are you kidding me? This is a year after he's been gone, and I still haven't put him on blast for being a tyrant and a bully and everything else that he has been. I'm like, unbelievable. So, I mean, obviously my lawyer just sent a message that said, we decline your allocation, your request. If you have any questions, please call. And I haven't heard anything from him until a week ago before he puts out his fake apology where he says that I had done him wrong on the business side, which is complete bull. And the only reason he did that and it's the only time I've heard of him other than a lawyer's letter, was because one of the guys called and said, dude, you're trying to ruin our team. I don't want to work with you anymore. That's why he's done it. So here we are, dude. That's the real story.
Wow. And so, first off, I appreciate you coming on and talking about all of this. B, why now? You know, you said you held it on. We sometimes I would bother you and ask you about certain things. You didn't want to talk about it. Why do you want?
For the record, Ariel knew a bunch of stuff, and I mentioned that before because he and I talk, and he's asked me, and I've told him, but said don't put anything out. So Ariel would needle little things because he knew information.
What are you talking?
And I've talked to you about that.
Wow. And so here you are taking a shot at me. First off, I did not know about the lawsuit or him trying to sue or threatening to sue. I did not. You said that I knew that. I did not know that. You may have forgotten who you told it to, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Not really. There's no real point in me trying to do that, but I just wanted to clear that up. But what I want to ask is why now? Why do you feel clearly? I mean, you've been on almost an hour, and usually when you come on, it's very light, and we have a lot of fun. And I could tell you're fired up. I can't see you, but I could tell you're fired up, and it takes a lot to kind of lay. Why now?
Well, I'll tell you why now. So this guy has basically. I mean, the most important thing about a fighter's mentality and being successful is his self-belief. And Dwayne has gone out of his way, and this is what happens. My brother was in a cult. It altered his life forever. I understand about abusive relationships. I understand about, pimps and hoes, man. This is the way it is. When you have somebody that's trying to make people believe that you can't do things without them and create a dependency, that's unhealthy. And when he starts becoming public with saying ignorant things about my team, which has a bunch of future champions like Cody Garbrandt and Paige Van Zandt and Andre Feely and Joseph Morales and Angelo Trevino, some guys that Dwayne probably doesn't even know their names because they didn't pay him any money. That becomes offensive to me. On top of that, it's going to come out in this reality show. You're going to see, because Connor picked up right away when Dwayne started making comments about no one's a champion on our team except for TJ, who TJ is a product of our team. TJ is a product of this mentality. I've talked over and over with his father about it and his wife and TJ himself, and he understands the process and was really actually very distraught when Dwayne refused to come back to the team to help coach him. So TJ was forced to because he felt comfortable, go and spend a little time with Dwayne and spend time with our team, spend a little time with Dwayne, etc., and was basically in tears because Dwayne refused to be a giving coach and said, no, I'm building my own thing over here. It's just become a position where this guy it's been silenced too long. This guy's been a tyrant. He's only about himself and money. He's been a bully, and I'm not going to let him bully me. I'm not sitting here trying to get bullied by a guy that I've helped build up and done a lot of great things for. And the hard part is Dwayne is a bit delusional, and he believes half this stuff. I know because I've argued the same argument with him 4 or 5 times about something that was not true, and I'm like, dude, that did not happen. That is not what happened. So when it's first off going to come out on national television because Connor picked up that Dwayne and started talking a bunch of crap about our team and was like, dude, what's up with that? And it ended up being a confrontation on the show, which you guys are going to see. So that it comes up there. Then Dwayne and while he's coaching TJ and Danny, makes a comment to just slander our team. Then on top of that, he does this an apology, which is basically just talking crap on me, and because he says the word apology doesn't make an apology, and he says a bunch of false things in his apology. So I'm like, dude, I tried to let this guy just go and be on his way, but dysfunction just finds this guy. It just finds this guy. And that's probably why when I called him, he was the only person that had no house and no gym and was broke.
Did he reach out to you?
On top of that,
go ahead.
On top of that, this is ironic because, Chad's fight got pushed back, and Dwayne, as soon as I was out of the gym and I let him stay longer after the time I had originally allotted, he started manipulating the guys and like I said, promoting everybody. And I come back and everybody's got their belts promoted, like guys that had no business, getting promoted to like certain levels, etc. He's like been kissing even the girls' butts. He's been been nicer to them and like all this different stuff. He ends up doing stuff for free like he used to never do before, like giving free mitt work and things like that. Because he's trying to keep this relationship. It's his lifeline. It's how he makes money now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when Joseph had a fight, the last fight that Dwayne cornered him for, Dwayne called him and said, "Hey man, I'm going to be out there anyways. Don't even worry about paying me. I'll just corner you." And Joseph's like, "All right, cool." Because I never made beef with the guys in Dwayne because I don't like to get in the heads of my guys. I want these guys to win, right? I don't want them dealing with drama in the gym. So Joseph goes out there. He didn't coach Joseph one day of that camp. Then he goes out for the week. For the first time ever, he goes out for a full week of media and everything else and does all the media, and then he corners Joseph. Then for Chad against Aldo, he didn't spend one day in Chad's camp on the fight for Aldo, but he goes out to Brazil a week early and does all the PR for it and does all the interviews for it, and he didn't spend one day of Chad's camp in a 2-month period helping Chad. Only the week of the fight. And then he used to never show up to the week of the fight. He only did that after he was out of the gym because he had to keep his name relevant, right? So, it comes to a point where, okay, the guy's using and abusing a position that I put him in, and I feel so bad because I put like, a wolf in sheep's clothing, basically, and I put someone in a power position that was only about himself. And did we learn from him? Of course. We learned from every single coach we had. Was he the only coach that was his whole livelihood depended on it and understood and got coached on how to build a brand off of it? Yes, the only one. Only about himself, man. And I hate to see it, and it's sickening to me.
So let me ask you this. This is the big question that everyone is asking me right now as you are recounting all of this, and it's the one that we've wondered for quite some time. Knowing all of this, after you've said all of this, how in the world can TJ Dillashaw train with both Alpha Male and Dwayne Ludwig? How can the team coexist with that happening?
Dude, I haven't even given Dwayne the time of day in conversation, and the real truth is, TJ's my guy. He's like my brother, and TJ's a very competitive person. And I never went to anyone and asked them not to do anything. I've never said don't train with this person, don't train with that one, and I haven't made this. This is going to be news to a lot of the guys because guys like Joseph Benavidez doesn't like drama, doesn't want to hear it. No one knows about this stuff, right? So I've done that myself because it hasn't been something that I need to make public or anything else. It's been something that I'm going to let slide under. But Dwayne, the jealous ex-girlfriend, is just needling and needling. I mean, that guy doesn't go out and train with him. He loses money. And that's all a guy cares about, And as far as TJ goes, I've had a talk with TJ. I sat down with TJ and I sat down with his father and his wife, and he shed some tears. He shared for me for the first time that he had asked Dwayne to come out and hold mitts and stuff for him for his title fight, and Dwayne refused, and that TJ had started bawling and was pretty upset that he had given so much. TJ was babysitting his kids. He was paying him extra money. He was doing all of his videos. He was then TJ was like that for Master Tong too. TJ lived with Master Tong. He'd give him rides to the casino. He'd give him extra cash. TJ knows how to bring the best out of his coaches, right? Mm-hmm. And they have a relationship. So I don't want anything, to go back to what I said about the most important thing about being a champion is your mentality. I don't want to break anybody's mentality or help hinder their mentality at all. And I don't give a crap about Dwayne. I just wish he'd leave it alone. It'd be fine even if, I'll be honest with you. We have a lot of coaches that are guest coaches that come in from other places. I've had Phil Nursen. I've had, Cody No Love is working with Brandon Six Guns from New Mexico. We've got a lot of guest coaches in addition to the culture that we've built. It's not an issue. That's not an issue. The issue now has become that Dwayne is realizing that he keeps putting his foot in his mouth and it's cutting a tie for him that's a good tie. Even with all the dysfunction, I would still allow him, as long as he was not bullying people and he was not, pimping out people, getting sponsors and making them wear them, etc. I'm still okay. Like, hey, if you serve your purpose, serve your purpose. And so in that, if he were really to apologize and say, hey, I apologize for something specific, not just like, hey, if I did anything wrong, I apologize. Dude, great, dude. I'm a guy that forgives and forgets. I've actually tried to let this guy slide out and still be a part, but he cannot handle it, man. It's unbelievable. Dysfunction will find Dwayne Ludwig.
In that interview with Fox Sports, he said that he reached out to you in the last week or so.
Yeah.
What happened there? And did you actually speak to him?
No. So this is what I find out. One of our guys, there's only one guy that has gone out to train with Dwayne, as of late. He just told Dwayne, dude, Dwayne, I don't like what you're doing. I don't like how you're attacking the team. I don't like the things you're saying, and I'm not going to work with you. That prompted Dwayne to tell him, hey, I'm going to make this right. So apparently that's when Dwayne texts me and says, hey, Urijah, this is Dwayne. Give me a call. Then I get a message from him. It says, hey, buddy, this is Dwayne. Just wanted to talk to you a couple times, buddy, and clear some things up, bud. And give me a call. Like that. The only other time I had any interaction with the guy was when I was getting a paper served to me with delusional amounts of discretionary bonuses and miscalculations on percentages and enforcing a contract that wasn't signed that was changed. I mean, I hope he does try to enforce a contract because he'll owe me a bunch of money. So did I talk to him? No, I didn't talk to him. And then I comes out with a fake apology the next day or 2 days later.
And you're not interested in talking to him, at least right now.
Sure, I'll talk to him.
Okay. But what if you guys have like a fine? Because who needs this kind of stress in their life, right? You said you tried to let it slide, and these things keep coming up.
Dude, I've been trying to let it slide for a year and a half. The guy's like, Grant, when I brought the guy in, we have team meetings where we talk about mentality, we talk about thinking big, we talk about a bunch of tools for success. Dwayne came to that stuff. He talked to me about so many things in his life that were, I was trying to help that guy out, man. And the money thing, I told him, I said, Dwayne, I've never had an issue with any one person in my whole life about money, and now I have an issue with you about money, about something that you can't prove that you just think is there. Like, does that give you a sign, like what's going on here? And on the other side, you have an issue with money, It's unbelievable. And I feel bad because actually I talked to one of the guys that went down there. Things started happening more and more. So one of the guys that went down there, and he said that Dwayne had two teenagers that tried to quit his gym because they didn't have any money. And Dwayne wouldn't let him quit. And I'm like, what do you mean he wouldn't let him quit? He said, he just wouldn't let him quit. He said, look, guys, you're not going to quit. You're going to find a way to get that, and you're going to stay on board. And I'm like, BS. And they're like, no, serious. And he was laughing about it. I'm like, well, did the guys quit? And they're like, no, I don't know what they did. They didn't quit, but they didn't have the money. And we said something to him, and he said Dwayne was laughing about it. I'm like, dude, when does the self-serving stop, man? I'm a guy, I just hate to see it. I just really do. And it's put TJ in a really weird position. And here he is fighting for the championship of his life, and he's got his brothers back home that are cheering for him and rooting for him. And he's got this guy who's self-serving, who's trying to convince people that, he has the secret ingredient to why they wouldn't, why other people would win, but TJ's the only one that does the right things, which he thinks is trained with him. Are you kidding me, dude? When Dwayne came to our camp, I was the number one contender and former world champion of a long time. Joseph had just come off of a tough loss, a title fight as well. A big title contender fight. He's the number one contender in the world. Chad's the number one contender in the world. TJ is in our gym, the number one contender in the world, and cornering me for a world championship. We've got Chris Holdsworth who just won the Ultimate Fighter show. We have the number one finish rate in the entire UFC when he comes into our gym. And he's trying to convince people that they can't without him, and he has some secret ingredient. He's trying to make people dependent on him, which is what cult members do, is what pimps do, which abusive relationships do. You don't need anybody. You don't need him. You know what I mean? It's a sickening thing for him to come and say something like that publicly and put TJ in an awkward position. TJ had to go on national television and say, no, I don't believe everything Dwayne says. We have plenty of people that are champions at the gym, and my guys are awesome. You know, he puts him in that position because TJ is getting hounded by people about the dumb things that his coach is saying. You know? It's unbelievable.
Do you think TJ will continue training with Dwayne prior to the Cruz fight and afterwards? Where do things stand right now from your perspective?
You know, I talked to TJ before his last camp. We had a great talk, and I just told him, hey, look, dude, this is after Dwayne sent the fictional, delusional letter about trying to sue for things that didn't exist, right, and things that weren't signed and etc. I said, dude, this guy is, I don't know what his problem is, TJ. I said, I love that you have a good relationship with him, and I know, you know how important it is for you to feel at your best. So I'm not saying what you do. I'm just letting you know that this is becoming an issue. I'm not going to say anything about it, but, you know, he's like, I know, man, he's putting me in a really hard spot and you know, this and that. And he's, you know, TJ, like I said, is switched back and forth, doing a little bit, touching up things there and coming here, etc. So if he is going out there, he'll be going out there alone, unfortunately. And as far as my relationship with TJ, it's great.
Okay.
Dwayne's his own dysfunctional thing. I'm not going to let dysfunction bring me down.
And
I'm not going to let Dwayne Ludwig's hunger for money and attention and building his brand, which I feel sorry for the people who's probably milking for every dime possible. I'm not going to let that take away from something that I built. I mean, TJ is a guy that I've known for a very long time. He's lived in my house. He's done everything that I've done. I've helped mentor the guy. I'm not going to let that do thing. And I'm glad that it's out in the air now. And the only reason things are out in the air is because Dwayne is a friggin' mess.
And from your perspective, Benavidez, Castillo, any of those other guys, they're not training there anymore?
No one's Danny went out there his last camp, and you know, he's in a rough spot right now. He's you know, he had a tough loss, which I thought he won his last fight, but no, he's not going to be going out there. Okay. Joseph's not going to be going out there. No one's going out there, as far as I know. And if they want to, they could. I don't care.
Okay.
But the truth is out there. But I mean, here's the deal. Guys can go wherever they want. That's one of the coolest things about our team is the cream rises to the top. We can go to any gym in the nation and roll jiu-jitsu or box or kickbox or do MMA, and it's fun. We don't have that closed door, like, secretive society, man. We're open. Now, is it going to be something that TJ does? I mean, I don't know. That's up to him. I know he'll be with us as well. But either way, it's not my thing. My thing is, Dwayne, let it go, buddy. Dude, find another way or whatever you got to do. Enough with, you know, biting another hand that feeds you, and enough with the dysfunction. Just go about your way and stay out of my life.
I was actually going to ask you if you wanted to say something to him, because I do believe that he is listening, but I guess that's the message right there, right?
Yeah, and I'll say this. We're good. If you're apologizing for bullying people and the things I talked about today, which I don't know if you are, because all you said was that you gave so much and were done raw on the business side of things, which is absolutely incorrect. If you're apologizing for something specific, then let's talk about that. What are you apologizing for? Because I'm an open guy, man. I'll accept your apology. I've let everything slide that's happened.
By the way, while we're talking about coaches here, where do things stand as far as your new coaching search? Because as it came out a couple of months ago now, or maybe a month or so ago, Martin Kampman is soon leaving the team. Have you found a new coach? You know what you're going to do there?
Well, we've got a lot of leadership on the team, and Justin Buckles has always been kind of a leader on the team and been a coach in a lot of ways as well. He stepped up big time, along with Kampman. Kampman has his own things going on with his family, etc., why he's leaving, but he's still here, and he'll be here and welcome back as much as he can for the remainder of our team. But and he's still here helping as well. Fabio Prado. We've got a lot of guest coaches that come in and help hold mitts, etc. So we're not hurting in any way, shape, or form. I step in as a coach, and I actually really enjoy doing it. TJ enjoys doing it. Joseph enjoys doing it. So between Justin kind of stepping up in the head position and Martin being there as well and running classes, and we're in a good position now. We're going to take our time, and it's not necessarily the only thing we need is we're a fighting team. So everybody has fights coming up and they have their focus, and now we've got superstars on every level. We've got Paige Van Zandt, who's on press tours, and Cody that's going to Japan, and I'm coaching the Ultimate Fighter, and Lance is on the show with me, and all these different things. So we need somebody who's there, whose whole focus is to make sure a good practice is run, and we have that covered. And we're going to continue to look for complementary guys to come in and learn from, just like we learned from Dwayne. Dwayne showed some great stuff. And we'll continue to use anything that we've learned from anybody. So it's not like a major rush on things, and we have a lot of coaches that are helping out. We have Brandon Six Guns out of New Mexico that comes in on occasion and helps out, and we've got a lot of good stuff. We've got great leadership, so we're not hurting in that position. We're not in any rush, and it's more of the media, guys like you, that are like making a big deal out of it.
What? Come on now, Urijah. That's not fair. That's not fair.
Not you necessarily, other people.
Well, you just said like me. You just said like me.
Well, what do you do for a living?
Well, I am the media, but hey, look, since we're here,
will other media be like you?
Well, yes, but you're saying you're putting me in that basket. I do believe you reached out to me to speak about this, so
I did.
Okay, so let's be fair here.
You know why, Ariel?
Yeah.
Because you're my boy.
I know, and I appreciate that.
And I had two other guys that called me for the story, and I said, let me talk to my boy Ariel.
Well, thank you. Do you feel
Ariel knows reporting?
Do you feel like you've gotten everything out? Is there anything else that we've gone almost an hour and a half here, but I appreciate the candor, and I appreciate that you have come here to, finally get this off your back. I know it must have been quite a weight on your shoulders, but do you feel like we missed anything, that you wanted to go over anything or reiterate anything or clarify anything at all? The floor is yours.
I just want to say and just remind everybody out there who's listening, who may be in a position where somebody's trying to convince you that you can't without them, that they're wrong. This is a world where, there's, how many champions there are in this world, and every single thing, in MMA and soccer and ballerinas and whatever the world is, has, how many champions there are? All of them have a self-belief, and that's the most important thing. So if anyone's ever trying to break down your self-belief and trying to make you feel like you can't without them, or that you're not good enough because somebody else just has a gift, that's a bunch of BS, man. I was not the most gifted guy in the world. I wasn't a state champion in high school wrestling. I wasn't a national champion in college. I was a world champion in the UFC, in the mixed martial arts, in the WC, and a top contender for the last however many years in the UFC. And guys that believe in themselves, Cody Garbrandt, Paige Van Zandt, these are some of the names that you're going to see rise at the top. These are people that believe in themselves, okay? And that's the thing that matters in this world. And whenever you have somebody that's trying to break you down and try to make you believe that they have some secret ingredient or secret move, BS, man. The only thing that's real is what you believe. That's what reality is. Your perception is reality. So I just like to encourage people to follow their hearts and don't let anybody hold you down.
Well said. I think we will end it on that note. I will say that and I've told you this before, you're a special kind of guy, because people like me, we try to find out about the TJ thing and, the title loss here and all that. And you really, I remember, and I'll say it again on this show, I talked about it when it happened, right after the second Barao loss, right? You were talking about TJ in the cage. So when I hear you talking about your teammates and wanting to uplift them and believing in yourself, I do feel like that's very authentic, and it comes from a very good place. And as captain of the team, I would imagine you take this stuff very personally, as you should. You are the captain. You are the face of that team, and
I've got
I feel
guys
that
you guys are going to hear of that have been with me since they're 10 and 11 years old. A guy like Joseph Morales and Angelo Trevino. Those are two guys that have been with me since they're little kids that are going to be world champions. And like you said about TJ, there's nothing that gives me more joy than seeing my guys succeed. It's one thing to do it yourself. It's another thing to see guys succeed. And I did, after the first, this is a good little ending thing also. After the first time I lost to Barao, TJ was in my corner, and I saw what TJ was doing in practice. This is before Dwayne was there, anything. TJ was a beast in the room, and I knew that he was a great matchup for Barao. And so right after that fight, the week after, I sat down with TJ and I said, look, dude, you're going to be up next for that title. You're going to get it before I am, right? Just be prepared and be mentally ready for that because it's going to happen. Because TJ was our guy, man. He's our guy that we've been building up, right? And then I went into Dana's office after my loss, and I talked to him about the time TJ first came into spar and he was bleeding through his nose and screaming at the world, like, is that all you got? Getting beat up but asking for more. And I pitched him giving TJ that title shot, right? On top of after I said it to the public, right? That was something that was true. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot of truth that people want to forget about the way things are because, the media forms things, etc. But this sport to me is bigger than winning and losing. It's bigger than what I've done in my career. This is a family that I've built. This is a lifestyle that I've built. This is these are my people. You know what I mean? So to see someone come in and just take a big dump all over it, like someone that's all about themselves, is just heartbreaking.
Hey, last thing, Urijah. I just want to end on this. Do you regret ever getting into business with Dwayne?
I don't like to have regrets, but yes.
Okay. I think that says it all. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. I'm glad that you came to me. I'm glad we had you on the show. I'm glad we had a lot of time to talk here and that you were the last guest of the day because I didn't want to shortchange you. Appreciate it greatly. Some other time, perhaps in the near future, we can have you on to talk about Tough and Frankie Science and all that stuff. But for now, we have run out of time. So thank you, Urijah. Appreciate it greatly, and we'll talk to you soon.
You got it, brother.
All right, there he is, the California Kid, going 80 minutes or so, 70 minutes or so, talking about his history with Dwayne Ludwig. And just to reiterate, that article, that interview with Elias Cepeda, foxsports.com does a great job, came out Friday afternoon. Dwayne, if you can find it, just Google Dwayne Ludwig, it will come up. Issued this apology, and shortly thereafter I heard from Urijah, who reached out to me and said he wanted to come on to clear the air from his perspective once and for all. And I think that's what happened here today. So we thank him greatly, and hopefully I think at the end they can talk, they can meet up, and as I once asked Rampage at UFC 130, squash it once and for all, and everyone can move on and have great careers, be positive, and just forget about all this. But we'll leave it at that for now. Okay, so we've gone over. We have 8 minutes left in the program. No, New York Rick, what are you doing? Get on.
I'm here.
We have 7 minutes left. Oh, people are calling in. It's chaos back there. Thank you for giving me an extra few minutes. Anything you want to say about that?
There is literally nothing I have to say about that. Urijah Faber said everything.
Let's rapid fire.
Okay. Guidelines.
Can you try to, the questions.
Summarize them.
Yes,
Yeah.
Just say.
What's the point of having these guidelines for the NSAC if they're not going to stick to them?
That's something I asked, or I failed to ask Lucas about. And the one that drives me nuts, maybe more so than anything, 4 months ago, they said if you fail for cannabis, third time, you get 3 years. Where the hell does 5 years come from? Because he was so disrespectful that he would, take the Fifth Amendment? What? So that's a whole other issue. And they're not defying their own rules. What's the point? I agree.
Andy Foster, quote unquote, sensible and forward thinking. Would it be possible for other commissions to just disregard the Nevada suspension?
Great question as well. Why does everyone have to listen to Nevada? If Nevada is going to break their own rules and show this kind of bias, why does California and New Jersey and Florida and Tennessee and I can understand the UFC, it's in their backyard and they have a good relationship, fine. Overseas when they're the commission, fine. But why does Quebec or Ontario or British, why does it have to be, Nevada, end all be all, and we have to do what they say? Now I understand UFC is the promoter, but why? Why does it have to be that way? Again, as I said on Thursday, I do believe there should be a national governing body, not state by state, United States governing body that focuses on mixed martial arts, because I think that would clear up a lot of these issues state by state.
Ariel, you said that we need to go away from the Fight Pass hearings. This person is making the case that they're the only way we can, watch these and hold people accountable. What do you have to say about that?
It's a good point. What I meant by that was, I can see, you can watch it and you can see that they're playing up to the cameras and they're acting very cocky. They have these huge egos and they're breaking their own rules and they're not governing fairly.
So then my question in return to that would be, do you think they would not be acting this way if the cameras weren't on? Look, do you think that he would have been suspended less?
This is the first, this isn't the first time that you can actually tune into a commission. Even before Fight Pass, you can call in. There were other ways to cover these. You could also go there in person. But now that it has become this thing, this reality show, if you will, I think it has pumped up their egos. They have massive heads, and you could see the way they're behaving and the jokes and the little quips here and there. So that's why I say, you know what? Enough of these people. If we're going to broadcast Nevada, let's broadcast all of them, for God's sakes. But we can't. I get it. It's cheap to do it there. It's in Nevada. I don't want anything to do with it. I understand why. Transparency, it's good to watch. It's good to, lay all the cards out. But I do believe that they are flexing for the cameras. And as a result, that could be leading to bad things for these fighters.
I think it could also be what ultimately is the downfall of their position.
Maybe.
So I think
maybe it's good. Let's put that spotlight right on them. Yeah, okay, fine.
That's my position.
Fair enough.
Okay. Ronda Rousey speaking out in defense of Nick Diaz. Any thoughts on that?
It was fantastic. It was unbelievable. You see, once Ronda spoke about it, it got on ESPN, all these papers, all these big media outlets were talking. Ronda is a gigantic star. She is the biggest star in the sport. There's no doubt about it at this point. She is transcendent. It's huge. But will she take it that next step? Someone asked her at the Q&A about Nevada, and Dana jumped in. And I get it. I don't think that the UFC needs to battle Nevada. But I do think that as the promoter and the owner of the organization, it is in their best interest to sometimes stick up for their guys. So what Ronda did was amazing, especially considering the fact that no one even asked her about it. She spoke up herself. Where does she go from here? Her talking about it is good enough. But like in many situations, you can always do more.
What are your thoughts on Fedor signing to fight in Japan?
Wow. I don't know if we have enough time about that one. I'll say that, look, I was holding out hope that he would finally fight in the UFC because that's the one last thing that we haven't seen him do. And there are so many great matchups for him. No one can argue that. Even if you hate the UFC, you can't argue that that's where the best are fighting right now, especially in that division. So I was holding out hope. I wanted to see that happen at least once before it's all said and done. Not all that surprised after I saw Jerry Millen there, and given his relationship with Saki Kabara and you know how he is treated and his history in Japan, it's not surprising. But there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, a tape delayed fight New Year's Eve, what does that really do? We don't know about the checkbook. We don't know about how much. Honestly, my reaction was ho hum.
So the second part of this is actually, to the first thing that you mentioned. Does this kill off any hope that he would ever fight in the UFC? Do you think that these 2 fights and then no UFC, or is it possible to go there after? What do you think about that?
I think this was it, and I hope I'm wrong, but this was the best chance. I think this was it. This is 2009 Yarinoka. Like, what? We've been there, done that. Who's he gonna fight? Randy Couture? Yeah, it's cool. I'll watch. Trust me, I'll watch. I wanted to see Fedor a part of the UFC once and for all, to see what he could do, to see that site. It just would have been great. And unfortunately, we're not going to get it. But look, it's great for that new organization. It's great for Japan. It's so that's why I'm like, 6 and 1, half dozen the other. I get why he did it. I get why they wanted him. I get why Spike wants him. Selfishly, I just wanted to see that happen. I don't hate the guy. Do what you got to do, man. Be comfortable. Get your money. Do what you got to do. But selfishly, I wanted to see that vision.
Last question, then we're out of here. Who might he fight on New Year's Eve?
I'm putting my eggs in the Randy Couture basket. I don't think it's Kimbo. Look, we have to remember this. This is not a Bellator show, right? This is Saki Kibara's show. And Bellator fighters will be on the card, but he's paying Fedor. You think Scott Coker is going to take Kimbo out of the live Bellator show and put him in Japan on tape delay? I don't see that happening. Could, but if you're asking me right here and now on September 21st, I'll bet on Randy.
That's it.
Yeah, so Nick Diaz, we'll talk more about that. I wanted to talk a little bit more, but we ran out of time. I'm sorry. I know a lot of you love the questions. I love the questions. I love talking to New York Rick, but we went a little long with Urijah. Don't worry, we will talk much more about Nick Diaz, probably a lot more about Fedor as well on Thursday's MMA Beat. Congratulations to Liam McGeary on his big win, and congratulations also to Phil Davis. What a night it was for him. Looked like a superstar, and it was good to see. Also, congratulations to Josh Thompson and Carrie Melendez, Gilbert Melendez's wife, on their debut wins for the brand. I know Carrie was fighting for glory, but it was really Bellator. And we didn't even get into all that, which I wanted to talk to New York Rick about just how glory was sort of misrepresented. We spoke about it a little bit with Luke, but wanted to talk about that a little more. Also, congratulations to Justin Gaethje. A very nice win for him, and David Branch as well. And Chael Sonnen, great debut for WSOF as a broadcaster. All right, we have run out of time. What a show. What a way to come back. You can hit my music. I guess you were waiting for that. I'm sorry. Thanks for letting me go a little longer. Whew. Something about Mondays here, my friends. Magic happens. And it was good to be back. And guess what? We're back next Monday. And the Monday after that. And after that, and after that, and after that. UFC back in Japan on Saturday. Very excited about that. Co-main event, by the way, Gegard Mousasi versus Uriah Hall. Very big fight for Uriah. Not his last chance at greatness or anything crazy like that, but this is a big step up for him. So I'm curious about that. Feels like we talked to Henry Cejudo 5 hours ago. It was 3.5 hours ago. Great stuff from him. I applaud him. I appreciate his efforts. Curious to see where things go from here. Thank you very much to him for the time. Thank you very much to Luke Thomas. Great stuff as always. All the best to Josh Barnett. Appreciate him stopping by today. Thank you very much to Eddie Alvarez. Great stuff once again from Eddie. Appreciate Michael Chiesa's time. Good luck to him on December 10th. Thank you very much to Lucas Middlebrook, the attorney for one Nick Diaz. Very good stuff out of him. And once again, thank you very much to Urijah Faber for his time. Daniel Cormier is calling me right now. He's coming up. Houston, October 3rd, UFC 192. We'll talk about that next week on the program. But again, don't forget about Nick Diaz. A lot of things are going to happen between now and next week and the week after that. What happened to Nick Diaz last week, regardless of what you think of him, was a crime, and we got to fix it. More to come. If you missed anything, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all the good stuff. Until next week, say peace. I'm out of here.